The following video contains content some viewers might find disturbing. The views and opinions expressed here are not facts and are nothing more than entertainment. The views and opinions are not facts and do not represent the views and opinions of Xirtus or our channel, and do not necessarily represent or reflect the views of the guests, YouTube, Google, mainstream media, society, or civilization at large, or anybody. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hey everybody, I'm Andreas. Welcome to Wednesday Ultra. What show is this?
Ultra.
Wednesday Ultra.
I messed it up.
I think that sums it up though. That's pretty much. We're gonna get better at that. I think everybody.
Ultra.
Wednesday Ultra. Did you see?
Guys, we rehearsed this all day.
Yeah.
What
Oh,
is this? Why does it look exactly like Ari
we have a
Shafir's
thing?
Jew shirt?
It looks like a what?
Almost.
Why does this look exactly like Ari Shafir's Jew shirt?
And we're demonetized.
This has seven points. This is much.
No, I
more-
know, but is this like an inside fashion joke or something? Because Ari Shafir made a merch just like that, and I'm like,
I
is
don't know, bro.
I'm missing out on?
Maybe, you know what? If maybe now I just respect him more for having good taste. If he had something that looks like this, good for him, right? But it's a little different because do you ever look at the septagram before? Earlier, I was talking to Douglas, and he's like, "Is that the septagram?" Oh, yes, indeed.
It's exactly what I
said.
said.
A 7-point star. Okay.
You guys remember what the 7-pointed star is for, right? So we're a full disclosure show kind of place here, right? Like this is the 7-pointed star. If you type in sheriff, probably with spelled correctly. I mean, sheriff car. Come on, where's it? Also, heptagram is the way I would say it. And you said septagram. That was the other funny part of it. But California sheriff car. Where do we find it? Sometimes they don't have it. California sheriff car.
Hey, that guy right in the middle on the last search you had one on. Is a bad.
You saw it? You saw it? Okay, I'll go back.
And then
was the septagram. Or I'm sorry, keep going. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I apologize.
This one here, though, is the point. Here's the septagram, like Napa County septagram. So places where they went out into the wild frontier, they use the septagram a lot because that is the symbol of John D. D septagram. And what he did with the septagram is he used it to trap a hexagram and a pentagram, depending, right? So you could also trap 2 pentagrams, or you could trap 3 hexagrams, right? So let's see if I can see an example.
Yeah, it's like a spork for summoners.
Yeah, you can use this to, if you summon something, you keep it inside of the thing. It keeps it safe from escaping. Right, which is why sheriffs use it, because if they're going to be using magical powers, you don't want them to escape. So that's the idea there. So the septagram, more powerful than the hexagram, arguably by John D. I don't know.
3 out of 4 dentists agree. Absolutely.
Do you guys know about the mock battle of Manila? I was talking about this the other day a little bit, but have you heard of this?
No. What is the mock battle? No.
So let me walk you through this battle that ended the Spanish-American War. Okay, so the mock battle of Manila. So earlier we were talking about this term to run amok. Actually, you pulled up the link for that.
I can read it. Amok originated from the Malay word mang amok, which when roughly defined means to make a furious and desperate charge. According to Malaysian and Indonesian cultures, amok was rooted in a deep spiritual belief. They believed that amok was caused by the Hantu Belang, which was an evil tiger spirit that entered one's body and caused heinous acts.
Right. So this is interesting for a bazillion reasons. But, I mean, to try to keep it kind of simple, if you think about the Philippines and Malaysia and Indonesia, and also, you have Islamic culture there, and we were talking about a bit about the Hashashins, which is a contestable thing, right? Because assassin, Hashin, if you go to the wiki page, I'm sure they'll tell you this. It's at this point, the idea that was a wiki got to say it.
You had it. It was the 5th result on the. There you go.
Yeah. So basically, I'm sure they'll say Templar. They had a lot of these books that say that they were feeding them drugs did come from Europeans, did come from Templar that were saying it, and presents at TARDIS, by the way. They present this entire idea that the Bohemond and the Knights Templar lay siege at Kalabat Habi and near TARDIS, and then they had all these people that were drugged out, obsessed with fighting for them. But that was the reason why they thought it was important, also, so that the Templars should be doing the same thing. So anyway, running amok, it could very well be connected to Hashashins. It seems like they were taking kratom or different kinds of substances so that they could survive crazy battles. And then we brought up the idea of the yo-yo. I don't know if I can find a picture of it.
Which I had no idea. I had always thought the yo-yo seemed threatening as a child for some unspoken reason.
They hurt if they crack you in the head. Right?
Like the yo-yo was the is the gnarliest weapon. If you think about it, and I'm not trying to promote violence on this podcast or anything like that. I'm just saying the yo-yo, and you can weaponize anything. But this was martial arts. This was the traditional martial arts in the Philippines. They had these insanely sharp rocks that were attached by this coil, this rope that they were actually weaving. That's super strong. I can't remember if it was a leather or if it's actually, I think it's a bound coil from the barks. And so they could literally just, the other thing is this thing would detach at a certain point. So you could use it to just hit somebody so hard. And so these were the weapons that they were running amok. Anyway, this is not just a toy. People were getting hurt. People were terrified. The Spanish had conquered the Philippines, but they were losing because they weren't really good at it. And this, eventually the Filipinos were about to win the war in the 1890s. They had basically won the war against the Spanish, and that's when.
Was there a blade on the yo-yo, or it's just a hard, heavy object?
Super sharp rock, super glassy stone.
You know,
I wish I could find.
The hula hoop was originally a weapon too.
Really?
I just made that up.
I can even imagine.
I don't doubt that. Even if you're just making that up, that sounds believable.
I mean, you could weaponize a hula hoop if you spin it the other direction so it hits somebody and it's sharpened or something like that. Again, not promoting that kind of behavior. But I think
weapons, absolutely.
I think the hula hoop gets you into perfect Kundalini form, though, and so it's very useful if you're doing your breathing exercise yoga through a hula hoop. And seriously, it gets your spine in line. So I think the hula hoop is probably a very good thing for like Sikh soldiers and warriors to practice.
In the future, hula hoops were banned.
Yeah. But so this is Philippines, the 1890s. You can see they're basically awesome. And then they're fighting the Spanish. And then there's this thing called the Mock Battle of Manila. And what it is this. Teddy Roosevelt gets in to defeating and taking over countries. He hears that Spain is losing this war. He says, hey, Spain, can we beat you instead? And Spain's like, yeah, here's the deal. Basically, we just don't want to lose to the Filipinos. It would be totally fine to lose to the Americans. What if you just like pay us $20 million and we have a mock battle? Oh, and I skipped a part. Because running amok is so terrifying, and they were so afraid of fighting the Filipinos because they were such serious soldiers. They knew that they would die for their cause, right? So they said, what we have to do is we have to distract the Filipinos, draw them out of the capital, have a fake battle in Manila that we're guaranteeing no Filipinos will take place in, because otherwise all bets are off, and then we'll just all pretend to die and we'll have a crisis act. And so this is like officially the Spanish-American battle. It's called the Mock Battle of Manila. And it's crazy. It wasn't until after World War II that the Philippines gained independence as a territory. This was the first time we had to decide as a country, do we, what are we going to do? Are we going to have these people be citizens? Or are we going to own them like an empire? Which is, of course, the way it went. Mm-hmm. And that, eventually Philippines was able to declare independence, because it's like, dude, this is the most gnarly optics ever. And it's like, why didn't you let us have any participation in the actual battle? So it all came out basically. But
when it seems like this is the like final saga of the empire, like weeding out any of the ancient pagan sort of old world cultures, right? Like they conquered the far stretches of the Asian continent, and now they've conquered the final holdouts, so to speak, and it's not like a real war. It's more like here, you guys take the reins now. You can be the economic overseers for this third world nation state that we just created.
One of the craziest parts is the official story is that Roosevelt had, he was kind of a young and up and coming guy, even though he was wealthy and part of all the right families. So through his connections in his families, he orchestrated the deal personally, didn't inform the government. He just did it. And afterwards became a war hero because he had taken over the Philippines for the United States. Basically no congressional interests or anything like that. Just decided to do it. And
he was a doer, man, with the Rough Riders and everything too. He liked to get out there and get his hands dirty. Do you guys know the story of Roosevelt and the teddy bear?
Oh yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, tell me the version. Maybe
I think Teddy Roosevelt might have been the first case of anthropomorphizing an animal. Animals weren't cute until sort of recently. Like, we grew up with cartoons, so that's not really part of our paradigm. But he was a hunter, and he shot a bear that was like too young, and then like he tried to save its life, and everyone just thought that was like he was being so goofy, so kind of childish. So they wrote a newspaper piece about it. They're like, oh, it's Teddy's bear. And then that was the first stuffed animal they actually started selling Teddy's bear. But prior to that, there's no really, at least in Western culture, written examples of anthropomorphizing animals and making them cute. Like bears weren't cute before that.
There's probably a reason for that, and that's because worshiping animals in any form is forbidden by the Old Testament and many other cultures.
Interesting.
Well, I mean, I was about to say maybe because there were a lot of characters in the pre-period that were a lot more anthropomorphized.
Yeah, and the fairy tales of like the British Isles and whatnot had certain characters that, I mean, they weren't anthropomorphic, but they had elements of animal features. I mean, they were mainly humans.
Those pseudo adorable.
Yeah. Well,
Exactly.
but yeah, that's a good point. And it also, Seth, I'm glad you brought this up. This is where the conservation movement was kind of first started, because people began to sympathize with animals rather than see them as material objects, which I think there's a certain argument that we need animals to survive, for sure. We need to eat them and consume them. Maybe there's an argument against that can be made as well. But I think, our environment would have suffered far more if it wasn't for this,
I agree. Yeah. And Roosevelt was also the National Parks Act guy too, preserving our wild lands for the animals. And as you guys know, and the ultra irregulars, I'm a huge fan of humanization. I want to humanize robots, humanize animals. I think that humans have the capacity to spread love. You know what I mean? And as we develop technologically and philosophically, we have more to spread and more to give. And you can even see it rub off on animals, and animals start to have pets of their own and adopt human behaviors. And it's almost like this consciousness can spread. So I'm very, very enamored with the archetype of the super machismo guy that has a soft spot for animals, like Hemingway, Roosevelt, stuff like that. That's like one of my favorite archetypes.
Wasn't there evidence, Andres, for like humans in these old world civilizations having sort of like more of a intelligent relationship with animals, like those
Right. Taoism talks a lot about
sheep plants or something is like a metaphor for that.
Well, so like Lao Tzu talks a lot about the idea that originally we were all in harmony and could communicate and intuit and understand with empathy what trees were saying and animals, but eventually nature kind of divided when we started, like there was something that happened where we started to consume a bunch of life, like killing things and eating animals and things like that. And so that changed our ability, and it, psychologically divided us in some way. Who's to say? But that is like why there are those like the Jainists and such that try to only eat blossoms of things, fruits of things, without killing plants and letting things have their whole life cycles, and living simply so that others can live.
Right. That's like the vegan conundrum. Like, can you eat carnivores? Because like a lot of times vegans will bust on, I'm a carnivore. A lot of times vegans will bust on me for eating animals that eat grass. They're like, if animals that eat grass are your favorite ones, you're just absorbing their energy. Why don't you? I mean, I can't eat grass personally, but like I think lions are cool. Lions eat zebras. I like zebras too. I think cows are super cute. And then I eat cows also. And that's kind of what life is actually like. You can try to restructure life in certain ways, like you can make a bear cute, and that seems to work, but you can't make lions lie down and eat grass, even though in the Bible it says
I made this meme on yesterday.
I think you have a great point that the nature takes that stuff back regardless of whether we eat it or not, right? So when a cow dies, it's sort of wasteful to not.
And when we get buried in the ground and animals die, I mean that's what the trees eat too. So trees are actually carnivorous. So
I'll chime in on this one. I think it might be connected to our telepathic ability that we lost at some point in our evolution. A lot of people say it was pineal gland calcification, or maybe we were bred out of it. But there's another reason, that's telepathy is only useful to the prey. It's not useful to predators. In fact, most redacted literature you read, science fiction and stuff about people with telepathic abilities who are in fantasy novels will turn off their ability when they're hunting, because their busy mind alerts everyone to their intentions. So in other words, the last 200 years we've been eating meat systematically. We're forcing children to eat meat and ignoring the slaughter so they don't know about it. And by doing that for 200 years, we might have totally lost some certain abilities only available to prey. And we became
That's a great insight. That makes me think of the study on the African trees, that when a giraffe starts eating one, it sends out a signal, whatever a plant version of a pheromone is, to the neighboring trees, and they turn their leaves from sweet to bitter so they won't get eaten.
It's sad, isn't it?
So
Yeah.
then, Ari, let me ask you, what do you think then about eating meat? Do you think it is like, are lions just like low energy, non-telepathic beings because they're always eating meat, or do you think it's intended to be that way? Or
On my Earth's timeline, which is only about 4,000 plus years, predators are an artifact of a dark time, of the Dark Ages, and then afterwards, all of our wars. We had all these wars that ended up eliminating entire species and giving predators advantages in certain areas, and they just kind of take over. There's no doubt that certain places like the West America or Eastern Asia have some of the deadliest animals known to man, and they have some of the harshest conditions to live in as well. So, my point is, predators are a temporary situation that the animals are going through. It's not natural unless you're willing to believe in the billion-year timeline. On that timeline, you have to accept predators as a balanced part of nature. But on a very short timeline of only a matter of thousands of years, predators are basically going to go extinct, which is pretty clear now that they are going extinct, along with all of the large-size animals, which simply can't compete anymore. Elephants are only still around because the Africans preserved them in the last 200 years from all of those safari predators. They literally protected them with their lives in many places in Africa.
And how does, like, without billions of years for evolution, how does like this going from like 4 stomachs to digest grass into like 1 stomach just for meat? Like, how does that work in a short timeline?
Well, I think the evolution went in the opposite direction there. It evolved into 4 stomachs. Part of that is because those cows basically had to eat everything to survive, right? They didn't have much choice. So life kind of finds a way, essentially.
So like fast evolution, basically, like short.
Oh yeah, very fast. Yeah. Oh, okay. In fact, if you look at literature, the Golden Age was described as a time when there really wasn't any species, as in the word specification. There was no way to distinguish yet. Every single life form out there was literally compatible in some way, and we know that today. That 99 point something DNA of all mammals on this planet, including bugs, is identical. So you just factor that back into the origin time, you'll see that there was no way to tell one animal from humans from animals back then. And since then, we've all evolved considerably.
Now, would you say, like, and I love that you pointed out the fact that, for the most part, predators have gone extinct. I know humans have caused a bit of damage in that realm, but I mean, in theory, we're part of nature too, right? So would you say there are other examples beyond predators that within biology that kind of highlight your timeline as factual?
Trying to understand the question there. Examples that are like predators?
Yeah, any other animals or plant life that give us indications that we're looking at it.
Well, here's a perfect example. I mean, you guys heard me talk about Mars. Definitely believe that there's humans on Mars, always has been. But one thing that makes them very different from us is their need to survive. Totally different from ours. And that need has manifested into this ill will, where they're willing to sort of rule Earth and go to such extremes as to cause warfare and genocide on here just to control us. This is just my theory, and there might be a totally different version of that in reality. But for me, it works to explain why humans would act this way, because all in all, it's extremely hard to get people to go to war. I mean, just look at this thing in Russia. Like, someone just tried to trigger World War III yesterday with that stupid missile in Kiev, and everyone called it out. And they're like, "What are you doing? Are you crazy? Do you realize what you..." Yeah, so it's so hard to get us to actually go to war. You can kind of see people trying to trigger it all the time. But to me, I have to explain that in human behavior. I can't just say those are predator.
Yeah, it is interesting because people were always saying like humans are hyper predatorial, and it's like some of them, there are definitely some humans that are like, and it seems clear that that's like part of our society. It's not just in movies like American Psycho, but yeah, there are a lot of people that are very prey-like.
Yes.
Like a huge majority of the population, arguably, I think, seems to be just taxpayer.
Right, and the act of arranged marriages, which goes all the way to the top of the deep state pyramid, arranged marriage itself is an act of predator and prey matching up. So
now, are any of your theories about like the short evolution and stuff like that, does this coincide with like any Edenic principles from the Bible, where like water's misting up from the ground and it never rains and stuff like that? Like, do you think the physical conditions have changed to a point where there's no way we can go back to that Edenic state where we're just lying and eating grass with the wolves and the lions and stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. We experienced the Golden Age, which is completely, remarkable, and we'll never go see anything like that again. The Dark Age, which was terrible, and now we're sort of in a limbo of of survival age, where you have to do the work yourself, and the manna isn't falling from heaven anymore. This would be in my opinion, the last stage that all solar systems go through before they rebirth the whole process again.
Are you describing sort of like what the Hindu like idea of like the yuga cycle is, where you have like a dark age, a golden age, a sort of bronze, silver, and then it resets, starts over again? So you're saying we won't experience a golden age, but in the next cycle there will be another golden age. Is that what you're saying?
Oh yeah, it's inevitable. The Earth will inevitably die, and as it recedes to the outer solar system to be part of that huge asteroid belt of dead planets out there, the solar system will be ripe for a new planet to inhabit it. In fact, a whole new set of planets. And at some point, there will be a whole new Big Bang and all that. The Big Bang creation myth is actually acceptable to me, as long as it's reduced to the scale of just our solar system and happening only within the solar system, not the entire universe. And if you look at what the Russian astronomers are saying in the last couple months, they're saying the exact same thing, that Big Bang, they'll accept it if it's reduced to just our solar system. They will not accept it if it's an entire universe. Now, think about the perspective of the first humans. Could they really tell that the universe was being created? Could they see that far? Absolutely not. But they might have assumed that, it went from nothing to something, and therefore that was the moment of universal creation. Now, we're smart enough in the future to look past that mistake and say it wasn't the whole universe created back then. And yet we can still accept Big Bang creation as a cyclical event that starts life and then ends it later in a big collapse or a big, because several theories there. You got big rifts, big spread. You got big collapse where it all collapses back into itself. And these are explanations for the universe resetting, because they have no idea how the universe could reset. When it comes to solar systems, we know exactly how they reset. It's all plasma physics, and essentially has to do with filling out vacuums of electromagnetic balance. An empty solar system is ripe for new planets. In a full solar system, like what we have right now, nothing will enter it right now. So sorry, I rambled a little bit there, but that's the general idea.
Oh, no, that's
Cool.
interesting.
No, thank you. Yeah.
If I could, Andreas, ask Ari another question. This might be a tangent. You have something loaded up, or can I fire away?
Oh, you can go ahead. I was gonna, just 2 seconds. I wanted to point out a couple of things. Like, one, when calculators,
He hasn't pulled up anything in like 5 minutes right now. His hands are shaking.
I wanted to, because he was saying some stuff, and so it's just like calculators. Women used to be calculators. That's what the word computer originally referred to the women and the men in the Navy who did the calculations to decide where to launch a cannonball, and then eventually they were using this to measure. The women were measuring the dimming of the stars in order to try to come up with a distance equation. The Nicholson-Morley equation became important then, and so that's been the contention over distance, whether or not there's ether. And I think a majority of people at this point are starting to accept ether. Russians are starting to accept ether, so that blows out of proportion all of the ideas that we were trying to use for space. But it's interesting because it all comes back to holographic universe anyway. Keep going with your question. Sorry.
No, that's great. Now I know why my computer acts up once a month. Anyways,
I'm crossing my arms.
That
This
was
is
a dad
language.
joke right there, bro. You got me.
that's a dad joke. I'm wondering what Ari thinks of the geo-heliocentric model. Forgive me if this is a tangent, but I recently learned about Tycho Brahe and his idea that the Earth bears a resemblance to the Sirius A and B system, where the Sun and Mars are in this sort of A and B relationship, and we as the Earth would be the correspondent to Sirius C, which is like this sort of theoretical body that's within that star system. We believe there's a small body, a planet there, but it's it's too small to see because of the brightness of Sirius A. Is this how you see the universe, or is there a different model you subscribe to?
Heliocentrism, or rather that the stars are all fixed and represent the center of the universe. In our solar system, our sun is the center of our universe. In other solar systems, the star is essentially a fixed point that is holding everything else in place. Now, in the Newtonian model, stars are not. Stars are just big balls of mass that generating their own heat, and they're moving kind of free form in the universe. But we know the stars to be fixed. They've always been called the fixed stars, and they maintain shapes and constellations. They don't move around. So the stars are sort of the foundation of the universe. And I would say galaxy, But I don't really believe that there is a separation between galaxies and anything bigger than that. We are in one giant universe galaxy, a big, giant spinning, whatever you want to call it. But it's not a Newtonian model because the Newtonian models, they fail. You try to simulate them, the center spins too fast. The outside planets and suns fly apart and never come back. You try any simulation, you'll see that's the case, except for the ones where they fine tune everything and create a sort of a negative vacuum equation of a constant that represents dark matter that holds everything together. They have to actually invent the concept of dark matter just to get the galaxies to spin. But back to the point about suns, as fixed locations, they represent all of the energy in the universe, the energy coming into the solar system from the universe, which is what powers the sun. The sun doesn't power itself. It's powered from the energy of the rest of the universe because the energy cannot be destroyed or created. It's simply there, simply churning around, changing voltage, frequency, amplitude. So the fixed suns essentially represent the center of layered energy bands, energy levels. You see the exact same thing in atoms. At atoms, you got the nucleus and then energy levels. Electrons jump between the levels. For some reason, I haven't heard this compared yet, but people should be comparing atomic structure directly to planets. Each planet is held in an energy level. Energy level is created by naturally by electromagnetic fields. The fields create negative and positive alternating layers. You could see this in Aurora Borealis. You can see this in the Absu layer theory, which appears in a lot of literature drawings and stuff. Different layers. The firmament is called. It's described as a layered substance. So point is that energy, mass, all of it forms in layers, not in big balls of mass. Planets are hollow and they also have inner layers. Suns are hollow and they also have inner layers. So that's how all energy, how all matter is sort of arranged in the universe. Basically, these theories haven't been understood too well because they all came out in the 90s as a result of plasma physics. And then everyone just sort of ignored it. No one really made any conclusions that they should have. And they should teach this stuff in school a little bit. So when it comes to planets, essentially a planet will never leave its orbit because the energy level of that orbit is holding it in place. That energy level is giving the planet all the energy it needs from the North Pole and then out the South Pole and then further out into the other planets. And finally, the energy state, the level of that the orbit is in, is causing the planet to rotate. Planets don't rotate on their own momentum. They actually rotate as a result of a constant charge, negative and positive on both ends, turning it. The constant charge, you can see this in electromagnetic engines, exact same thing. Essentially, the only real evidence I have there is because, according to literature, the calendar has changed many times in history. It jumped from 225 days to up to 360. And during those times, you didn't see a gradual change in the Earth's spinning or its orbit. You saw jumps. So jump after jump, these jumps can only be represented as state changes. And like I said, just like in atomic physics, state changes only happen in extreme situations when there's too much energy with an atom and it has to split, or when another atom comes and affects it, causing covalence. In other words, in the origin time of this solar system, you had so much instability that you constantly had the planets shifting and jumping orbits until they finally found their final orbits that we have today.
Oh, that's terrifying. So basically, oh man. So in other words, could you go ahead, Mark? Could we split our reality if we got too hyperionized? Sorry, keep going, Doug.
Well, I mean, that's just electric universe theory. And Ari, this is awesome. Thank you for this very high-minded conversation. I'm loving it. So, okay, you said yes about the the electric universe model.
Yes, electric universe.
Awesome.
Forgot to mention that.
Velikovsky.
He's interesting because he's the most well-known.
You're familiar.
Catastrophic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Catastrophe. Okay. Yes. Okay. Well, he talks about invader planets and everything you said. Very awesome correlations.
Thank you.
How would you bring in, if possible, Velikovsky, what he talks about in catastrophism with the invader planet theory with Venus?
Thea, bro.
Yeah, his book Worlds in Collision, I get the impression that two planets collided at some point. But actually, the planets can't collide. And in fact, asteroids can't hit us either. And the
We
moon
could have split ionization. This is Donnie Darko stuff. Sorry.
Well, maybe. Like the moon, you see craters all over it. Those aren't from collisions. Those are from electric scars. And proof for that is that the moon has only circular craters. You don't see any sideways craters, which you would expect if they were collisions. So the moon has no collisions. The Earth has no collisions. No planets ever hit each other, ever, actually. And the reason for this is that they're all electromagnetic bodies. As soon as two bodies get too close to each other, they go within the electromagnetic fields of each other. Everything changes. Suddenly they are opposing forces. And then again, suddenly they're attracting forces, and independently on a micro scale, there's a massive amount of discharge of energy, electric strikes. These strikes are called the thunderbolts of the gods in literature, and sometimes these thunderbolts are so profound. There's one thunderbolt that allegedly shot out from the sun and took 2.5 days to travel to Jupiter and then strike it. Boom! Pff. People had no doubt that the sun and Jupiter were at war, and why would you doubt that? Seeing something like that. So that kind of discharge. So Velikovsky is very interesting because he kind of came out of nowhere in the 60s, in a time when nobody even learned about planets. Nobody taught planets in school in the 60s or before 60s. It was all brand new back then. And Carl Sagan kind of challenged him to big debate as to what's real, and won, essentially. Everyone agreed that Velikovsky was wrong and that his theories were wrong. But what I found interesting, though, is later on when I found Fomenko's new chronology about modern history, I found Fomenko's critique on Immanuel Velikovsky. And it's like, well, here's one conspiracy theorist, critiquing another one. And what he basically said was, sure, he announced all these kinds of things, but of course there was an author previous to him who was even better at it, who did a way better job, who's even more ignored. I can look up, but I don't have him right now. But the point is,
yeah. By the way, if you want to share anything, Ari, just go ahead. Let me know.
Okay.
Tag you in.
I would love to know who that author is. That's
I like what you're doing right here. Okay, yeah. Let me just do that real fast.
That's okay. All right. So we have Fomenko checking out Velikovsky and giving cliff notes and footnotes. That's cool. That's like for all you Harry Potter fans, finding Snape's book of potions with the Half-Blood Prince's marking in it and everything. How's that? Yeah.
I had never heard of either of these gentlemen until I met Andreas and Ari, and then all of a sudden an Immanuel Velikovsky book ended up in my local bookstore.
That's awesome.
Out of sight, out of mind.
What's the book?
It's the one on the on Ramses. It's like the 5th in his series, so I got to catch up and buy the first 4. But yeah, awesome. it was like, oh, I know this name, Yeah, Ramses 2 in his time.
Fun. Nice. Oh yeah, it's tonight's episode called New Egypt for a reason. While you're finding that, did you guys hear about the new capital of Egypt? Do you guys know?
Yes. Well, break it down though. I saw it in passing. What's
Cairo?
The deal?
All right, so basically they're building the new Amarna, and so this is all. I'm immediately I'm reminded because you say this, but you go and you look into the new administrative capital called NAC or Azima al-Idariya al-Gadida. It's going to be the new administrative capital. It's going to have the tallest building in the world, and then it's going to have the taller building in the world, a kilometer tall. The Obelisco will be the tallest obelisk and therefore tower in the world. Everything's going to have these weird mosquito-proof water systems that move it around. The government's installing, let's see here. Where's the picture here? This is the octagon, which will replace the Pentagon as the world's largest military establishment in the world. It looks like a flying saucer or an Apple corporation, but you've got also the 2 in the center of the 8, which are the integral parts of the administration. So these are the main ministries, and this is like the government. And then there are mosques and communities. Have you seen Epcot at Disney World? This is Epcot. This is the model for Epcot. They're building it. Finally, here's what the mosques and the octagons will look like. Super cray. And then let's see, there was a last little bit I wanted to show. Well, you can see the warriors city, or the monument for the unknown warrior is going to be like the Vatican with the obelisk in front of it, all rebuilt with a bigger obelisk than the original. And then this will be taller than the trade capital. And so that's there. That's their
Ari.
plan.
Also, no rush, no worries, man. In your own time, because we had a good thing going, dude. Keep us going. Keep us going.
Sure, yeah. Here, let me show you what I found here. I
Sweet.
grab the window. Sorry, I wasn't ready.
Awesome for the
No,
new.
Ari's got some pretty great. Ari's got some pretty great stuff, actually.
Right, so check out this quote here. This is from Anatoly Fomenko. He's author of the New Chronology, and he's basically going over modern history. And he doesn't delve into the Old Testament stuff or, prior to 12th century. Basically, he's saying that this other guy, N.A. Morozov, Nikolai Alexandrovich Morozov, who the Wikipedia doesn't mention any of his research other than he's a revolutionary in the Russian Revolution. But Fomenko, I was totally surprised when I read this, mentioned that Morozov's research into catastrophism was considerably more profound and detailed and exact than Velikovsky, who came much later, and yet he was completely ignored and defeated by the popular science community. So Fomenko saying this, that he actually understood that there was forces opposing this guy that were much more broad than they expected, because they think they're a bunch of nerd historians. It's like, no one really cares about religious texts, and they find out that actually this is the most powerful stuff there is. It's more powerful than money.
History, cool.
Right. So get back. Try to remember what I was going to say about him. Kind of totally blanked.
No worries.
So anyway,
modern history, Fomenko.
Right. That's what I was going to say. So the thing is, what he's discovered and what I've found in other unrelated research is that when the deep state is trying to protect history, they're willing to let a lot of certain things go. For example, they allowed Velikovsky to totally reinterpret the Old Testament in such a public way, and then they kind of shut him down. He was a controlled opposition agent. How do I know? Why does Fomenko think so? Because Velikovsky protected modern history. And as long as you protect modern history, then everything's cool, right? So Fomenko also noticed another historian that he was actually trying to work with over the 19th century research. And there's a quote here, I don't have it. But he basically said, if it wasn't for this one guy, this guy that was supposed to help him in Russia, if he had just helped, then he would have the 19th century as well. But for some reason, that century was the hardest one to delve into and to look for redactions and timeline mishaps. When it was the most protected. You'd think that the ancient history would be most protected, but it was the 19th. So I finally came to my conclusion that really what we're seeing here is criminals covering up their tracks. That's all it is. When you do something like you wipe out South America or something, you don't want it to say that it was within the last 100 years. People will come and complain that you did it. So they're going to say it was 800 years ago, 900 years ago. They're going to push it that far back. And it seems that the worst atrocities in all of history occurred in the 19th century. And then we're pushed back way far, 1,000, 3,000 years, that kind of thing. At least that's what this evidence is demonstrating.
Chilling, truly. A lot to take in, fascinating, frightening, because the implications are that, to a pretty fine degree, the way we all see the world is deeply incorrect.
It might be.
The idea of accepting the deaths of people that happened in the 19th century and being like, oh, well, that was 1,000 years ago. So the Crusades, for instance, like saying that a lot of the deaths just happened then, or plagues instead of the flu and malaria and things that happened. The malaria has killed, as many people as communism. So these kinds of things.
What about the history of gunpowder?
That's a fun one, right? So I was thinking about that the other day. You know this, right? So there were these monks in Tartar City, which is in modern day China.
Yeah, you posted about this. Yeah, keep going.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
Well, so they were looking for the elixir to immortality. They were trying to find, and so they were using saltpeter and tartaric acid, or what's it called? A cream of tartar, right? Coke ash, and a couple other things, and sulfur, right? And then they figured with the egg white and some magical stuff. And instead, they created gunpowder, and so basically the elixir of immortality. But it's still a really powerful, useful thing in a lot of other ways as well. So
egg white and cream of tartar. They almost stumbled upon meringue too. Just need sugar.
Which is probably
meringue pie.
Yeah,
love
meringue gunpowder. That's what they were going for.
Stay tasty while we shoot you.
But yeah, I mean the idea of like the 19th century being so many points of intersection for hold on, so many points of intersection for our history to be changed. That's the part where I think everyone kind of agrees. So the Russians have theirs, the Turks have theirs, the Catholics have theirs. Everyone seems to be confused. So Fomenko that's the reason why he was hired, because nobody had a complete understanding of what was going on in the 19th century.
Yeah, if you understand the 90s, what Russia was put through after that Cold War, they were basically reduced to like a colony of the European Union, broke and just war torn. They were in a position where if they didn't start looking into their history, they're going to be wiped
Plus,
out.
what is the history? So, like, you just saw the mock battle of Manila. So you know what it's like in the 1800s and 19th century. Like, this is the end of it. So it's pretty common for them to have a newspaper say one thing where it's probably not exactly what really went down. Probably says like harrowing events. These people fought for their lives, blah, 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 blah. It doesn't say mock battle on the newspaper.
Xirtus, did you see in Half Moon Bay down here in Cali, due to erosion under like a big Marriott, I think it's called, I forget the name of the Marriott resort.
It's the Ritz-Carlton one, right? I don't know if I can. How do I pull up my own?
Body surfing right there, actually, when I was staying in Laguna.
There you go. The Ritz-Carlton. Yeah.
Colonnades.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet. Pulled up there right over these houses. So there's a bunch of places like this. I was looking in China Bay in California. The thing is, you would easily lose. You'd lose sight of this because there's so many. They build systems that kind of almost look like this to try to reinforce the wall, because the wall does break away as the ocean comes at it.
Yeah.
So these things could have also been installed just to keep the erosion from happening. But then they found the stones. And so that really that was the thing that was like, wait a second, this is a lot older than we thought. This might be original period. So
yeah, it's
pretty crazy.
The mud level rising is a pretty big concern compared to the water.
Do you see this? Look at that. There's a church in there. That was the last. I wish I could hold it on the frame better. Skip to the. Is it going to do it? Hold on. It's coming.
So we're talking about a fully civilized, rolling, civilization on the West Coast, just kicking it.
Right, with thousands, at least thousands of years of development of alternative technologies, not based on leverage, and our whole idea of like the synthesis of our technology. Like, it seems like they have started at a totally different point and developed technologies that were created, civilizations that were equal but different, and built in ways that we can't really understand, because the way we think is largely informed by the way we do things, and the way we've been doing things for thousands of years is mechanical leverage. That's like our only, standard physics, mechanical leverage. That's the way we view everything. How am I going to move that big thing? I'm going to need a bigger thing to push it or something. You know what I mean? Like, apparently it looks like the only way to construct these things is with totally alternative technologies that develop from a different starting point.
Yeah. Ari, do you have anything on your website about the Tartarian technology? Like, what do you think about Tartarian, pre-reset technology?
Well, there's a lot of evidence, right? What kind of technologies? What's its nature? We don't really have a comparison. Like, you don't see any HD TVs, you don't see any handheld stuff. It seems to me that the reason why we don't see that stuff is because they didn't need it. Their technology just went in a different direction. I would call that direction analog. There's no doubt that we live in a digital age, and as a programmer, I can pretty much tell you that everything built today is the worst possible version we could possibly have come up with. Slow, metered, very metered. Whereas an analog system, had we built it, everything would be instant and unlimited bandwidth, unlimited resolution, unlimited storage, you name it. So it appears to me that this technology exists in the past. There's stories about technology being found that was buried, right? The Book of Mormon, someone found tablets that contained information. Now, I've heard in the Joseph Smith story that the gold tablets were actually redaction, that they're emeralds or quartz crystals, and that he had a tool to take video and audio out of the tablets, but he didn't have a way to play it a second time. It's almost like there's something that he needed, a second device or machine system to play videos without losing the initial charge stored within the crystal. And he didn't know how to do that. So he lost the energy every time you extracted it from this old technology. To me, that's an example of analog technology. If you store energy in crystals, you basically can store audio, video, like I said, infinite resolution, and then transmit it across the planet. Where are the transmitters? Well, you got that Eiffel Tower in France, right? There apparently were those kind of towers all over the place, especially here in America, in Washington state. You had them. There's still a couple left today. Yes, exactly. So these are antennas, very obviously. You know that they joke about it in predictive programming media, like in the 2 Spider-Man movies ago. They're joking about it.
There literally is a giant antenna on top of the Eiffel Tower.
Yeah.
For the
The only problem with this antenna is that all of the other ones were destroyed. So there's like only one left now. So you can't really like demonstrate its technology right now. But they definitely work, and it's an example of an old world free technology. You know, unlimited communication and energy, and no meters. You know, no meters at all. No kind of like charging people for using it, that kind of thing. Just there wasn't any Thomas Edison, type technology yet. So one thing about that, the technology we have today that we've learned since, it isn't just like the other direction we could go in. Like I said, it's metered, and every single thing that we've built since Thomas Edison, since NASA, like for example, rockets. Rockets are the worst way to get into space. Completely illogical. In fact, I don't think that rockets even work the way they say. I think there's some kind of stabilizing mechanism in all rockets that prevent them from tilting out of control immediately. And it's not telling us about the stabilizing vertical thrust technology. There's not going to tell us about it. Why do we worship the rocket? You know, like the third Planet of the Apes movie, they're all worshiping the nuclear bomb at the end. Yes, we worship the rocket because it's a military device. It's not going to get us into space. It's never going to get us into space. It's only the tool we're using for the next war, and we are very much in a World War III right now. So eventually we're going to get that. We're going to realize, wait a sec, the rockets were just like a way to prevent us from understanding what kind of technology would take us into space. Nobody can make a rocket that travels anywhere. So we're going to have to go backwards into the older technology that used to exist. What exists in the 18th? Airships, and you got all these videos of people riding on these little bikes and these little platforms. Anti-gravity tech. I suppose I could pull it up if you don't have any examples on Google, because I know you're not going to find anything there. But
just to briefly interrupt, I'm sure you know who controls all the world's helium supply too.
Oh yeah, how's that?
NASA, through the U.S. government, has like almost a monopoly on all helium. It's almost impossible to buy large quantities of helium.
Wow, I totally believe that. In fact, I can't get NO2 anymore. I can't. It's like it's not available in the dentist's office.
You gotta go China. Go to the are you in California?
Go to a fish concert. That's where
I know a guy. I know a guy.
Go to a parking lot outside of the
Exactly.
festival.
God.
Awesome.
So if you want, I can pull. So I did do the APEC Alternative Propulsion Engineering Conference on Sunday, so you can watch that. It's like 6 hours of different people's presentations on their ideas for alternate propulsion. But a lot of it does come into spin state and ideas for the Hutchison's effect for alternative propulsion. But yeah, if you've got anything, Ari, I'd love to see any anti-gravity stuff. Stargate, anti-gravity, you know me. I like it. I
think your audio is playing.
Mine?
Yeah, that video that you just played.
Oh, crazy. It does that now? Sweet.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's finally working.
That's pretty cool.
Propulsion.
But yeah, so I mean, if you want to
go turn it off.
It's still playing?
Yeah, it's still playing.
What's going on?
Is anyone
no.
or just me?
No, I'm not.
You might have a video on your channel, on your screen.
Oh, I'm sorry, guys.
Haha.
It's okay.
Right. That's embarrassing. All
What's
right.
the name of your
I sound
website?
like a robot a lot, so don't worry. It's okay.
What's your website called, Ari?
A Paradigm Threat?
Paradigm.
.net.
Yeah, hold on a second. I'm going to pull up some stuff here.
Cool.
Okay, yeah, sorry, that was embarrassing. So anti-gravity tech, right?
And guys, you can get this research, and it's really key. I say go to Paradigm Threat. It's a really great website, amongst other things.
I guess somehow I started playing a video and it was playing on my speakers. And anyway, so
you blamed me. I was excited.
Yeah,
too.
I know. God.
Like I can do that.
So one of the things that really convinced me of anti-gravity tech is I saw the lights of Phoenix, the Phoenix lights, the famous ones that millions of people saw.
You
saw it
witnessed
in
them with your own
2015.
eyes?
I saw it twice.
Whoa. When did you see it? When did you see it?
Randomly, in 2015 at midnight, or around 2 a.m. actually, one of these black triangles flew right over my house, right over my neighborhood. It made such a big noise that I heard it first, and it was shaking the whole house. And I went outside and I saw it. The few nights later, it came again, and I actually woke up all my roommates, and we all saw it. So they can corroborate it with me that I'm not crazy. But more importantly, millions of people in Phoenix have seen these things. It's actually well known. So once you see these devices, you know that they exist, and you kind of get the feeling for what they are. Is they're so loud, there's so much energy around them. They are they're actually affecting essentially the ether around them. And the ether is what is the electromagnetic field that surrounds our planet naturally, and you can sort of reverse direction on it to go upward. You can go in the correct direction to go downward, that kind of thing. So anti-gravity technology is a spinning motion technology. Let's pull up some videos here, pictures.
I just had an amazing idea. Just to interject quickly, do you guys know how polarized lenses work?
How?
Like there's two layers. The light comes in there's one layer that allows light going in from one angle, and then another layer underneath that allows light coming in from the opposite angle. So if you actually put two polarized lenses on top of each other, perpendicular, no light will come through, and then you can rotate them and all the light comes through. So could it be something like that with the ether? Like something is like preventing it from passing through, or using it as like to create buoyancy or something like that?
Well, this video is coming through, right? You can see this. It's very simple. It's a spinning device that creates a rotating electromagnetic field. It just happens to be spinning the opposite direction of the Earth's magnetic field. And why does the Earth's magnetic field spin? It's because the Earth is spinning against the sun's energy. The sun's energy is sort of fixed in place, and the Earth spins, therefore pushing electromagnetic field, reversing motion from negative to positive around the Earth at all times. So if you were to create the exact same kind of field and spin it in the opposite direction, that will essentially cause an upward motion. Here's a audio. Here's a modern military craft. They put fans on them. The fans sort of hide what they are. Everyone thinks that's just really powerful fans, but fans are not
powerful. That fan can possibly be. Oh my God.
Right. Powerful fans are not stabilizing. We're talking about a vertical stabilizing.
That would rip your arm off
if it's a Dyson fan. I don't know. They make great vacuums. I don't know.
That's fair.
Right.
Good point.
So one of the things is that the airplanes that we fly in, they all use
clean
the same
energy.
Yeah, they all
for
use
real.
Yeah.
Oh.
Like here's a picture of a plane with the front blown in. This shouldn't be possible. If these planes are really aerodynamic planes, if they're really flying on just air and propeller thrust, look at those tiny wings. They're not even angled up. Look at those tiny propellers. They're not even jets. And
no, we swear. We swear it's the wings. No, seriously.
Yeah. They're so huge. These planes are so huge. I've seen them up close in the junkyard in Tucson. And you just got to wonder, how did they get in the air? So the
Lockheed love to make these giant Apache turkey size. Like the fattest plane you could make is the most fun thing you could do. Think about it.
Sorry, the guy that was flying
go
around.
To the orange one. Go down bottom right. The orange one. Bottom. That one.
Oh yeah, look how big it is.
Sorry, go ahead.
No problem. Go ahead, question.
Yeah, the guy that was flying around with the things on his hands that aren't fans, is that like Iron Man's like repulsors?
Just about.
Yes, I would say it's pretty much the same dealio. Just that looks different in the CGI movie. I mean, this is an invisible technology. You can hide it in the planes. So
it's like waves of something that are. Why doesn't it disturb the water more? Like you think that would be a terrible way to fly over the water.
If there's something that's actually removing the weight itself because it's spinning so fast, the electromagnetic spin is causing him to remain weightless, then he could,
even the point that he's aiming them down is just to distract.
Yeah, so you don't even realize the backpack's doing everything. Although it could be that those fans help push him a little, or just push him a little direction. Maybe I don't know.
That's how you steer.
I would argue that the fans also have the technology. I mean, the hands, also have the tech in them. Both the backpack and the hands. The hands are for stabilizing, and the backpack is for general lifting, essentially.
I hate to be like that guy who's that skeptical, because I'm really not. But where's the camera in that situation? And
who was filming that? That must be another suit, right?
Is
invisible selfie sticks are real?
Chroma key lines. So what are they called? Zip lines. Chroma key zip lines with cameras attached. Like that's possible. You have chroma
drone. It could be a drone. It could be a drone.
It could be a drone.
Probably a drone.
Invisible selfie stick.
I have a drone that
Phone is
follows me
moving
around.
pretty
surfing.
synchronistic with the guy. That's all.
It's true. You have a good point.
There really are invisible selfie sticks. They just stay out of the frame. I mean,
I have one. They're real.
But he probably had a drone, that was right next to him.
Drone. So I figured.
Yeah. But wait, what was that you were just showing a second ago? That last thing.
Oh, I was just looking around the anti-gravity pics. I could talk more about suppressed technology if you want.
Yeah, I'm interested also. I mean, do you have any thoughts on Stargates? But you can keep going if you don't. I mean,
well,
Red Cap Goblin in the chat says he was just in third person view. Funny. Shout out to the chat.
Cool.
So how about Mars a little bit? Because there's a couple things that I really
this is interesting to me because I'm all about this quantum entanglement. Like, I'm not super quantum, but entanglement, and the idea that Mars is Earth and we're all holographic plasma.
Right.
Keep going.
Well, we got pyramids all over the planet, and they're mostly around the equator. There has to be a reason for that.
Can you press Control plus and increase the size of the screen?
Yeah.
That's
about it for now.
Okay.
Yeah, the widescreen. Sorry. The pyramids they were built a long time ago. They've had some function. Now that function doesn't work anymore. So the movie Stargate kind of is predictive programming to imply that the pyramids have some connection to teleportation. But unlike the movie, in teleportation, quantum entanglement can only occur locally or within two balanced locations. Like you mentioned, Sirius earlier system. It's totally possible that Sirius represents a star system that's balanced out with our solar system, and that within those two places, rotating in our galaxy universe, they together are connected, even though neither location can connect anywhere else in the universe. If you follow me, it's a limited sort of space where the teleportation can occur. So within Earth, between the pyramids, from Earth to Mars, and possibly to another star system. But that's it. Not other side of the galaxy or another universe or dimension or any of that kind of thing.
Star to star. Tide.
Right.
Okay.
So here's Stargate. The whole movie was trying to convince us that it's really those little rings, that control technology. But actually, it's the pyramid structure itself. It routes energy from the electromagnetic field of the planet and condenses it into one of the chambers. Within that chamber, you can sort of talk to the other chambers and other pyramids, and in some scenarios you can teleport between them. There's a lot of literature about teleportation, the Boat of Ra in Egyptian, also the Ark of the Covenant. If you look at the literature of the Ark, it was a communication device. It was essentially the head of God would manifest within it and give people command. Do this, do that, build me an army worthy of Mordor. No, I'm just kidding. But you get the idea. So eventually, I kind of, after reading this literature, reading about the pyramids, and reading about catastrophe theory, I raised just one question. Why would they ever stop if people who made these pyramids pretty much dominated Earth with them, the Pyramidal Empire, the Egyptian Empire? If they use these artifacts to simulate deities and kind of Wizard of Oz style, if they made the slaves convinced that it was God enslaving them, then why would they ever stop? They probably keep doing it today, right? That's what led me to Mars. Eventually, when I looked at 19th century literature, there was this question of, is there life on Mars? And are they trying to influence Earth in any way? In the 20th century, we got this whole switch over to science fiction. Now we no longer believe that humans are on Mars. But in the 19th century, like I said, there's a lot of literature that's
it's parallel with this idea of demons and this idea it's like a parallel world. All of these places are parallel world. Yeah, I don't know if this is Cthulhu, but it's one of the Lovecraft things. And Lovecraft had stories about Venus and Mars and eclipses that connected you with other worlds
and communicating to beings on other planes, essentially.
Other planes, planate places, planate realities.
Yeah,
planets.
Exactly. Yeah. So CERN, this is the most expensive and most powerful device that we've ever created on Earth.
It's a freaking circle. It's literally Pac-Man. I can't believe they thought this was okay.
Yeah, and now they're going to create a bigger one, more expensive. So what is CERN? We've never figured it out. It has to be for something that they're not telling us about. So it just happens to be the exact same type of device as a pyramid. It condenses energy into one focal point, and from there it creates a quantum entanglement which connects to somewhere else. Where is that other place? It's going to be Mars, but it's probably going to be other places beyond as well. at the very least, is going to be Mars. Whenever Mars is in opposition, it's going to be a perfect time to teleport back and forth. But in order to do this, in order to keep
you got to do a satanic ritual. Yeah,
right. You have to convince people that it's not just like a bunch of humans with technology. It's like Satan giving you orders directly, and you have to manifest like the Ark of Covenant. That whole same thing that we find in the Old Testament appears to be happening in modern day, where the deity manifests in some elaborate simulation. A bunch of people play act accordingly and sort of fall in line. And
I'm sorry, because you're telling the perfect story, but because your screen just won't show the size, just to do it some justice.
Yeah, go for it.
Oh my God. Like this ritual, let me see if I can get the picture big enough so you can see. So here's the Aphex Twin thing going on. And so the Aphex Twin guy's sister, right? Aphex Twin sister, new agency environment, I think is the one it is. Sister, new climate change minister for Wales. So all the ties there to do the Godard tunnel ritual with scarabs climbing on the face of what seems to be Baphomet with two faces. While they get ready to do this stuff, I can't even show you like some of the pictures. Like technically, I feel like you're not supposed to see that one because some of these people are like European levels of naked when they come marching through. But then they come marching through at first looking like the movie Metropolis, where they're the workers. Let me see if I can find the workers in Metropolis slowly walk through these like their heads are sunken and they're sad and depressed. And that's the beginning, the end of the working age, that this is the work that was necessary to be done in order to bring us into a perfect time where we can celebrate. And then this is the celebration of what's coming from the other side of the Godard tunnel. I mean, this dude with his weird crab hands and this lady, which is just like, she's a scientist, you know? So, all right, I feel better now. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, please. That was a great description of these weird. And it's like
just the Godard tunnel ceremony. That was literally just freaking one. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And we saw that goat guy show up in the Jan 6 thing, right? That the shaman, right?
Bison.
Yeah. Exactly. So
Melissa's like, it's cultural, right? Exactly.
Right. So
he had like Viking tattoos too. I forget what it's called, but one of those geometric triangle things, and people were like, "Oh, that's a neo-Nazi tattoo," and then people looked it up and they're like, "No, it's some ancient Viking thing."
Yep. So here's what I find to be the most interesting, honestly, is I'm obsessed with the book War of the Worlds, and I've heard about it my whole life, read the books, saw the movies, listened to the album.
Did you hear the 30s radio play? Have you heard the Orson Welles radio play?
And I did a report in third grade on the 1938 broadcast.
Cool.
Which, my teacher was like, "Are you done yet? How long is this thing?"
Oh.
But man, the thing just really convinced me. I just did another show where audio drama where they reenacted the broadcast, and they were just talking about how Orson Welles is like this genius, how he came up with the whole thing and all this. I'm just sitting there thinking, guys, what if he was asked to do it? What if it was just a cover-up?
This isn't even the first time. You have If Day. The German in Canada, they pretended the Nazis invaded on If Day. This is not the first time we've done a political thing like this. Keep going.
No, it's not. There was the Battle of L.A. Let me see if I have it. Battle of L.A. when I don't have it. I should have had that picture ready. So the battle. Okay, I'm just gonna pull it here. Battle of Los Angeles.
That's the one where they were shooting a UFO off the coast. Nothing hit it, but shells came down and hit a bunch of people. Okay.
Famous picture. We've all seen this
crazy picture. Yeah.
Right. So they have been exposed in the past. But back on the topic, War of the Worlds. It's a story about tripods hit in London, and it's a really bizarre story because it's full of contradictions. It's like the Bible, honestly. It's like I've spent my whole life thinking about the contradictions in this book, just like people think of the contradictions in the Bible. And what are they? It's like this advanced species, which aren't human, come to Earth in this huge elaborate plan that they spend hundreds of years planning and don't know that there's any diseases on Earth. I mean, come on. There's so many contradictions like that in the book. For example, they stop firing the can after 10 days. The humans on Earth don't know why, because their invasion seems to be going well. It's like they almost knew that they're going to get killed by disease. So I can go on all day. But this book...
The Battle of Los Angeles is gnarly. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
This ought to prepare you for if there's a world war, I'm sorry. Just like they're afraid of the Japanese or maybe aliens. It could be anybody. You don't know.
They're expecting Japanese fighters, and instead they saw this big UFO that couldn't be damaged.
Fun.
So, yeah. So one question I raised was, if War of the Worlds was a real story, because it really seems like it, the way that the book is narrated, it's very detailed, like somebody's diary. When could it have possibly happened? I initially thought 17th century, Great London Fire and so forth, but that didn't match up at all. And now I'm convinced that it happened in the 19th century. That War of the Worlds is basically a redaction of events that happened in the 19th. And why did they happen? Because this is post-reset. The reset, which occurred in the early 19th century, whatever shape it took, didn't end up leaving a perfect scenario. The scenario had to be constantly reshapen. One of the biggest things that had to be fixed after the 19th century was history, right? All of world history was going to be redacted once again. And the biggest change that was being made was the British Empire. Thanks for pulling up those. Yeah, definitely go for that. The British Empire suddenly comes out of nowhere in the 19th century, and they take over the world. Now, Fomenko and a bunch of others point out that actually they stole all their history from Russia, and that all this history of kings and queens and so forth were much broader, involving all of Europe and Asia, and that those kings and queens were czars of Russia, that they're never in England. So when did the British ever start believing that they were actually the source of all of this European history?
Shout out to the bacteriophage for looking exactly like the War of the Worlds alien, giant bacteriophages. Keep going. Sorry.
Okay. So it occurred to me that in order to convince the British that they were the empire, the Rus Horde Empire, that the Roman Empire existed and all that kind of stuff, they basically had to completely re-educate London. And the timing for this would have been the 19th century. So at some point in the 19th century, London was attacked by these tripods. Now, they're just humans. There's no reason to believe that they're like squids or anything like that, giant brains or anything like that. And there's definitely no reason to believe that they were in the tripods. Because like I said, if you know the book, these asteroid tripods hit the ground. They're all molten, like on fire. And the people that saw them thought that, if there were any humans inside, that they're definitely being burnt alive. So no creatures in the tripods, no creatures in the cylinders, definitely not. These were remote controlled robots. Another thing to point out about the tripods is that they don't have any weapons built on them. They have to actually use their arms to hold a weapon, the heat ray, while in all photos, in all illustrations, every single one you see that, except for the later ones in the second half of 20th century. So my point is that the tripods were not weapons, and they were simply handling devices, advanced handling devices used on Mars that were brought to Earth and literally given a weapon, a heat ray, which they then held in the air and fired upon the towns. What was the goal of all this? Why were they doing this? They knew that they couldn't actually control Earth by force, by having tripods walking around all days, ruling us. That would never work. We would have form resistance to that. And in fact, they were trying to create this whole Jesuit plan of this whole westernized version of history, where every country had its own aristocracy and issued its own currency. It was a perfect world domination plan. So I have to imagine that the War of the Worlds incursion was only done in order to enhance that plan and execute it. In fact, it wasn't just an attack that failed. It was an attack that succeeded. And when they routed London, when they moved all the population out there and depopulated the hell out of that area, they basically removed all of their machines. And that's evident in the book too. There was only one machine that was destroyed, and it was immediately picked up by the other ones and taken out of sight. They didn't want to leave any evidence behind in the book. So it's a very clear illustration of an attempt to reorganize London, to re-educate everyone into this British Empire, which would then prevail from that point on, and supplied the British Empire with new technology that would take out all of the competition, the Spanish Empire and so forth, the ironclad battleships. These battleships showed up out of nowhere in the 19th century. They appear in the book, fighting the tripods. And without a doubt, the ironclads determined all 19th century battles and allowed that British Empire to actually take over the world in the late 19th, creating essentially then leaving the world in place in the 20th century, the world that we know now, India and China and Israel, all of these countries that we know today were all founded by British. The British had all of their artifacts. They took them into their museums. And we have to entirely trust the British right now as to the foundations of all of these countries. So it looks to me like the War of the Worlds isn't just a science fiction. It's actually the moment when the British were completely reorganized into their new paradigm. the British Empire mentality, the pride in the aristocracy and the king and the queen. And it is known and remembered as the Victorian era, because basically they had victory. They won, they defeated us, and now they're controlling us right now. So they declared victory on us, and that's the Victorian era, essentially.
And we're talking those who actually at the top that proclaimed victory on us are fellow humans from Mars, yes?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Are those the Saxon Gotha family that replaced the legitimate English monarchy? Was this done under them, or did they come later? Or are they from Mars?
Well, the Russian aristocracy was being replaced over hundreds of years. And after that, their entire history was stolen and pushed other places. So you see all these other aristocracies throughout Europe, which have evidence within them of being systematically replaced by somebody. And we don't understand any of it at this point.
Well, the English monarchy was replaced with, in my understanding, Romanian. The Saxon Gotha or Saxburg Gotha family replaced them. I might have the name wrong, and those are the people that are called the Blue Bloods. But you're saying right. People from Mars, so
Saxon Coburg von Gotha.
Yeah, Seth, you're right. Queen Victoria married into the Sax Coburg.
So what I'm asking is, how does all this line up with the War of the Worlds cover story and the creation of the Victorian era?
Well, here, let me pull up one other illustration, which will help here. Yep. Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting how when I was a boy, it was Saxon Coburg von Gotha, and now it's and Gotha, which is like and company. And the most infamous Saxon Coburg von Gotha guy is Andreas Saxon Coburg von Gotha, who lives in Louisiana. And I think he's like the most high. He's a higher royal. It's what's that movie where King Ralph? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, John Goodman.
2 seconds of a segue because I just can't help myself. So the King Ralph is a real thing. This is true. I mean, the person who is the highest royal is an American guy, Andreas Saxon Coburg Gotha. Let me see if I can find a picture of him.
And he's just chilling in Louisiana.
This is King Ralph. You know what I mean? Just so you know. Yeah, interesting cat.
Why is his name Ralph?
No, I mean, because King Ralph is the character in the movie, right? In the movie,
the question I was doing a bad job of trying to ask: who's from Mars? Who are the descendants of the people from Mars that are still?
Men are from Mars, women are from Venus. No,
I see what you did.
Well, to get into that, to straight up, the problem with Mars is that it's a hard place to live. It's not an easy place to find food or good plants or good meat or anything like that. And reproduction is a problem. It's hard to reproduce on Mars.
It's like Glendale.
Say what?
It's like Glendale.
Glendale. Wow.
Glendale, Arizona, Glendale, Colorado.
I know what you mean. Yeah,
California. Yeah.
So I use I consider predictive programming to be like one of the best clues of all. Like they've been telling us this stuff for a long time, since Bugs Bunny. They've been telling us that Mars needs women. The stuff that's basically called that, one of my favorite games, Zombies Ate My Neighbors, has a song called Mars needs cheerleaders. They constantly tell us this because it's true. If you watch the movie Eyes Wide Shut, you will see a ceremony of women being trained to go somewhere. What is this ceremony? Well, they're on cue. They walk forward and so forth. So they're being trained to go through a portal, essentially, on a huge ceremony, because it's really hard to get people to go through a voluntary quantum tunnel.
Alright, you're on a big wide monitor, right?
Yeah.
Try making this not full screen and shrinking the size of the window.
Not full screen.
There we go. And then extend it a bit. Oh, that's brilliant. Okay, here.
Okay, right. So yeah, if it's true that there's life on Mars and they need women and so forth, then that explains basically your question: what is going on with the aristocracy? Well, they need to basically constantly replenish, their power system on Mars, and the only way to do that is to constantly bring in women on Earth. Not just going to take anyone. Right. Exactly. So they're not going to just take anyone. Yeah, I know. It's Jim Carrey, right?
Yeah. And Jeff Goldblum.
Gina Davis.
Damon Wayans.
Guys, everyone watch that movie. It also has the song "Earth Girls Are Easy."
Jim Carrey's not in that, is he?
Yeah, he is.
He is. Holy cow!
Yeah, he's in that movie.
I didn't know who he was when I saw it.
And Damon Wayne is in there. That's Damon Wayne in the yellow there. But great musical. Sorry, got excited.
So yeah, Doom 2005. It demonstrates a quantum teleportation tunnel from Earth to Mars. I mean, these movies are telling us what's happening.
Yeah, and that's why Doom is so important. It's the most important game because you can play it in a web browser and like on an old computer.
Yeah. Can you believe that there's a Brave Little Toaster Goes to Mars movie?
I recently rewatched this because I know kids, and I'll tell you what, this movie holds up as being the weirdest Brave Little Toaster besides the first one. The first one's terrifying, but this one's all about planned obsolescent automatons that escape to Mars where they don't need oxygen and they are able to build their own society. It's amazing.
I know. So, right. So cool. You see the point is that if that's predictive programming, hiding the truth in plain sight, revelation of method, then so is War of the Worlds. Let me get into the tripods real fast because there's some really cool things I've noticed. These photos here are from the French version of the book. They're illustrated quite differently from the from the English, from the American versions. And what I've noticed is that you see that it looks like they have eyes, right? The tripods look like they have eyes.
Yeah.
In fact, they're called luminescent in the book. The giant illuminating eyes, like they have light coming from them. So straight up, the book describes the Martian alien creatures as having bright illuminating eyes, when it really doesn't make sense for any creature, especially one from such a desolate planet, to have glowing eyes. So the book must have been describing the machines themselves, not the creatures. It's just a redaction to put that detail into the creatures. Yeah. So,
right. Yeah. It describes like the creatures inside the machines as almost like squid or octopus, which is
right,
also.
Yeah. So in one scene in the book, the artilleryman is describing something that happened where a bunch of humans during the event, when the power was out and everyone didn't know what to do, they went to this building and they finally got this lamp to work. The electric lamp starts up, and what do? They all decided to start partying, and they get drunk. And as they're drunk, this tripod is standing there in the background in total darkness. At some point, one of them notices it, and all of them just start panicking. They don't even know where to go. The tripod just kind of stands there watching. All of the instances in this book do not describe to me an invading army that's trying to wipe anyone out. It describes first contact over and over. These people don't know what to do about the situation. In the book, the artilleryman is trying to rationalize it. He's saying, what should we do about these tripods? We need to build our own tripods, and we need to go and wipe them all out. That's a human trying to rationalize that his life has been completely changed and won't change back. And in this one incident with everyone deciding to get drunk when they had no food or anything, when they're being wiped out, is an example of British culture at the time unwilling to accept what was happening to it. And another illustration, I won't get into it. Another picture really captures that in the Jeff Wayne album. Those photos that come with the album are just really, they're like almost like based on real photos, in my opinion. If you look at like the horror in people's eyes and stuff, you have to wonder. Yeah, go ahead, please. You have to wonder how, at the same time they're making this album, that they captured such fear and intensity of a story that's supposed to be fake. The British have a special place for War of the Worlds in their literature. It's not just a fiction of them. They have at least two monuments in London and in I forget the name of that little town with a giant tripod monument.
Cool.
Still there today. So yeah, it could be a fictitious story, but it really looks like a redacted story, essentially.
That's crazy that they have monuments for it. Yeah. There's the awesome one of them.
Breakdown.
The Mars landing site. Okay.
Yeah, this one right here. This lady. It's so much more than you expect from a fiction. And this one right here on the bottom, this lady looks like she's looking at a camera even. If you look at her face, like she's actually seeing somebody take a photo of her or something. So it isn't just the best fictions seem to be based on something true, in my opinion.
Have you ever heard of the incident in Quito, Ecuador in 1949, where it seems like they repeated this War of the World radio hoax, but for a Spanish-speaking audience? Do you think that's connected to this possibly? And maybe there was like a tripod invasion in South America that was covered up under the guise of this radio play?
Well, thank you for mentioning that, because no, I've never heard of it, and it sounds like it lines up on the timeline. 1949, same time as war. This 1938 incident, Battle of LA, was leading up to World War II, and and this happened on the opposite side of the country, right? Okay, so let me get this right. 1938 was a broadcast. 1938 broadcast happened on the East Coast, and then 1942 I think, was the Battle of LA, and that happened on the West Coast. So you're mentioning another one that happened in Ecuador. So in my opinion, yes, these incursions essentially were done to control a certain area at a time. Conform people, change the politics, put some pawns in place, reorganize the government, move pieces off the chessboard, essentially. I mean, this is what you and I would do if we were attempting to rule Earth. We wouldn't show our tracks. We wouldn't leave anything behind. But it does seem like they slipped up a lot.
Do you think that there is more kind of future casting or showing their hand coming out now in the media, or do you think we've gotten most of it and now it's just about sifting through to see what they've got planned for us next? What do you think?
Honestly, it's all about trying to hide their existence and convince us that they don't exist. Who am I talking about? The deep state. They've done everything in their power to convince us that they don't exist. Even AI, the concept of AI itself is the idea that a computer can think as well as a human. But actually, if you know AI, like a programmer, I know AI, actually requires humans behind the scenes running things and a great deal of fine tuning and configuration. So AI is a hoax, will never exist, and yet they want us to believe in it so much so that when our world is eventually run by computers, it will still actually be run by the deep state. They will retain full control of all of that AI, essentially. So they're doing everything they can to hide their tracks and get us to believe that the things that happen in history are just the hand of God, or that's just how humans are. We're warlike, essentially.
Man, awesome. I feel like you feel like AI is not possible, or you think it's just that they're going to scam everybody and not actually deliver on it? Which part?
As a programmer, I don't believe that anything like AI is ever going to be possible. You're not going to have a computer representing a soul, because a soul is just one thing. Now you can put a soul in a computer, sure. There's plenty of like golem stories. Yeah, there's stuff like that. Where like in the 17th century, some guy creates a
homunculi
out of clay or something, and
homunculi. I'm trying to say.
So that could be done, but I don't think they'll ever generate AI like that, and I don't think you'll be able to control something like that.
I'm a big pusher of this at this point. I think in the next 3 to 4 years, you're going to have AI in heads of humans, and so it's going to become kind of that's the transhumanist thing. We're going to be the biological processing unit for AI.
I'm going to disagree. I'm going to go with Ari, because I thought, based on our Twitter thread, that we would get into Ray Kurzweil. So I took a moment to look through his book, The Age of Spiritual Machines. And I don't know if he's revised this since, but he predicts by 2019 that $1,000 computing device is now approximately equal to the computational ability of the human brain. Computers are now largely invisible and are embedded everywhere in walls, tables, chairs, desks, clothing, jewelry, and bodies. So right off the bat,
well, that was his prediction from when's this book? 1999 or 19?
Oh, he overshot a little bit.
Yeah. But
I mean, I'm sure there's other holes I could poke in it.
Still, that's not that bad. Like, I could find instances of examples of all of those things. Like, there are people with chips in their arms since 2001. The prevalence of it isn't that everyone has it, but it is becoming more common. Entire groups of Sweden are having.
My point was more about the computational power. Are we at the point of a human brain yet? Do you think?
Oh yeah, for sure. So the human brain computing system, though, costs $500,000 to do like a recursive neural net system. That's still really freaking cheap. Like to be able to create a human brain which is autistic and therefore smarter in certain ways than humans, able to infer certain things. That's the difference, though, of course, is it's not trained on your sensorial and your emotional protocols and your priorities. So that, I think, will come in the next 3 or 4 years, when humans can integrate and be used to actually feel about the process. And that's not going to help as much as people think. It'll just make people stop asking for things to emulate human form, because they're thinking, oh man, now we'll get to help with the trolley problem. Like, what human wants to have the feelings about every single trolley problem? So it's, that might be what your future job is just feeling bad about the way the world works until we get through the entropy.
So AI can understand what is feeling bad today.
Yeah.
Feel bad for me today, Doug.
I mean, right?
I think there's no way AI can surpass our intelligence without becoming extremely emotional as well. So I don't know if it's going to perform as good as it could just based on the specs. A lot like humans.
So what do you think is important about a human emotion that, Matt, like what is, or emotion in general?
I think it's just like bitter and sweet and life and death. It just comes with that's the price tag for intelligence is emotion. And anything that's truly intelligent will also have an equal measure of emotion. And that's, it's a limiter. It's like a governor, basically. It's a governing factor that kind of limits you from basically having godlike powers.
Yes, yeah. Couldn't you have that? You could just have governors. Sorry, go ahead, Ari. What do you say?
I say, what about Vulcans?
Oh yeah. Vulcans are, so this is the other thing. Star Trek is so gnarly. I kind of want to talk about this more tomorrow, though. But the idea of MAID in Canada, which is the medically assisted induced death that they allow for everyone to do, and the transporter, because the transporter system, you die, you come out at the other side, you're a new version of yourself, basically. But the other thing is in the transporter, sometimes like in the Rascals episode, they get the young Captain Picard, Jean-Luc Picard is like 25-year-old. So they have all of these things going on where, Scotty is stuck in the buffer and they reload Scotty. So he's not dead anymore, for 200 years. So it's really an immortality machine, but they don't do it for everybody. Here's the kick. It's like you have to stay in the buffer running all the time or you'll die. So only the elite and the essential get to be immortal through the transporter, basically. But then other people die. And that's really weird because so many ensigns die all the time. And they have the ability to bring them back. They literally just transported them. It's in the buffer. You know what I mean? And they're just
might have some arcane like rule book in Star Trek where that's immoral to bring people back from the a replicant version of them using the transporter because it's not going to be the original. You don't see a lot of replicants in Star Trek either, and you'd think that have
this isn't that much like my shirt. He doesn't have even a star. I thought you meant he had like a star or something.
Yeah, well, you put that word on a t-shirt, it connotates that vision in your mind. I think that's pretty damn close to your shirt.
I like Andreas's better.
I like yours better too.
By the way, how'd you get it so dang fast? You just made that design the other day. Would you have it like $20 overnight shipped?
No, I just, T Public did a pretty good job, I guess. Although they did send me one shirt that didn't have anything printed on it, they have to resend me. So I think they need to like lay off the stimulants and just get the shirts done. But good job, T Public. I appreciate it for all your hard work.
Looks good, T Public. Looks good.
Yeah. I mean, you guys, if you're looking for T Public shirts, the Xirtus store, it's on andreas.me and xirtus.com, and the link will be in the description below. But if you go to T Public and type Xirtus also, Wednesday Ultra, look for Wednesday Ultra. It's out there. It's on sale now. The coffee mug I didn't get, but now I'm thinking I might want to get one because it looked kind of cool. I was like, imagine it, you can get whatever color you want. It doesn't have to be green. But I like the green. I just decided it was cool. But, get that. That's just the Reese's. I like the Reese's. I might have to go through. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Whenever I see two colors together, I automatically know every superhero and supervillain those colors correspond with.
That is a really powerful thing to be able to do. I think that's very useful. But no, I mean, that was a good special. I thought he did a good job on his thing.
I'm sorry to interject with the picture. It was way too late. I didn't take us on a side tangent too far here.
I mean,
but I do want to connect it all back to Egypt. I think we always do that with the titles where we title it something and then it's like, what? Why is it called that?
I'm a big fan of doing that. I mean, okay, so it's up to guys. What do you prefer? Do you want to go on a little deeper into Ari's presentation, talk a little bit about time crystals and things like that, analog energy, or should we go
on Ari's toes? So let's let Ari say his piece.
Yeah. Okay, Ari, if you have more to present, feel free, and we'll go to the administrative capital after.
No, I think I covered most of the things. I didn't cover mud flood, but then I always do that. I always cover mud flood, so we don't necessarily have to go into that this time.
Well, how about this? Let me try to rope them together. Was Egypt affected by the mud flood? Can we see like evidence for that on pyramids or the Sphinx, for that matter?
Well, as we know, the Sphinx was fully buried before it was re-excavated, right? Have you seen that picture?
Yeah, it was like only up to its head.
Yeah, so I mean, they say that happened from sands. No, in fact, the locals would have preserved it because the locals did a great job of preserving the pyramids for a long time before the British sort of got rid of all the black people that lived in Egypt and
Imagine
placed them with white
the
people
Nile.
who live there now.
Imagine how friggin' nuts the Nile is. Just like, I mean, so when you, I mean, and especially the further you get away, like, because the thing is, this water isn't coming from the coast, it's going into the coast from Ethiopia. So, I mean, it's just, imagine this crazy thing where glacial runoff in Ethiopia is traveling for thousands of miles on this one path through eventually the desert into the coast. It is the craziest thing to see. And there's nothing like it. I mean,
it's the only northbound river in the world.
It won't let me show that picture big, the jerks. But, you know, here's the thing. You can see the sand dunes. You can look in Nile, Wales, Sahara.
I hate to be contrarian all the time, Ari, but I have seen other northward rivers. Is there a different definition? Are those rivers maybe doing that because of elevation discrepancies, and this is a flat?
Yeah, sorry to not be specific
river?
there, but I only meant of its size, since the Nile is, I think, the second largest or the largest river. Okay. But yes, there are smaller northbound rivers, but you'll notice that they're only on geographic down, what do you call them, slopes.
Right. Okay.
Descent. Yeah.
Otherwise,
and so
they're almost all south. Almost every river on Earth is southbound.
Yeah.
And there were.
What about the lower hemisphere, though?
I think it's still southbound. It's pretty interesting.
Really? Oh. I thought that was the reason that
works well on the flat Earth map, with the highest point being the North Pole in the center, and then everything.
I might be totally wrong about that one, but it's like the southern hemisphere is like a giant ocean. So,
dude,
I could be confused.
Never flushed a toilet on the other side of the equator.
Yeah, that's what
it's. It's totally true, man. That's why you have to keep the lid down, because otherwise it just like shoots out in your face.
Man.
It's not true at all. There's nothing about backwards spinning.
They don't spin the other way.
No, that's true. Okay. Yeah.
Really?
In fact, yeah, I don't know where that one came from. But okay, so it is interesting when you look at the Taman Reset, because the Wadis, which now mean valleys, used to mean springs, and they mean like seasonal rivers, and the Taman Reset rivers that flew across Africa were all of a sudden erased at one point because they were cut off. And this is a big thing. Like the Nile was controlled to keep irrigation flowing directly into On or Amarna, depending, probably onto On, which is modern day Cairo, and that dried up all the land for everybody else during the Ramses II period. Or actually the first period, but by the second period, everyone was screwed. And it was all owned by the pharaoh, when the pharaoh meant the royal house by that point. But so that was not nearly as long ago as people think. And then it's been in the last 1,000 years that maybe 1,600 years to 1,000 years that it's turned fully into a desert, probably into the 19th century, 16th to 19th century. And I don't know, Ari, your work on this might be, I'd love to see more examples, but 19th century, Napoleon, Egypt, if you see some of the pictures of, I forget the name of his main man in Egypt that went for him and did a lot of the excavations and things. But essentially they found places, and then while they were there, they were covered in huge sandstorms. So it sounds kind of more like what you're saying. Like it was immediately after maybe within 50 to 60 years. It could have been that there was like something that happened right before it in the 17th century, 18th century.
Right. It's possible that it was a result of the Napoleonic Wars.
Or also the Napoleon. So the other thought maybe is that what we're calling the Napoleonic Wars are like, so when Yugoslavia got through the war in World War II, the Soviet Union would just show up places that people were all dead. The Nazis and the locals had died. And they're like, we're taking over. We won the war. Right. So I feel like Napoleon might have been a little bit like that. This story about, okay, this whole reset, we're the first to show up, put our flag down and claim it after the explosion, which might have been decades earlier. I don't know for sure, but if it's 1811, 1812, then it kind of matches up with the previous generation being when some complete destruction of the system happens. Right. But then it still takes like 10 or 20 years for it to end up starting to look like this. And then by the 19th century, that's when the sandstorms are at their peak, into the 20th century. So right now they're trying to reclaim all those areas. I mean, you've seen the Sahara Sea project. They want to build a sea in the Sahara right now,
Right. So one question is how did they build those pyramids in the first place? The Nile, we always say, okay, yeah, there was a Nile there. They used the river. They could survive in the harsh desert. But there are so many other pyramids in Mesopotamia area that really are not near any bodies of water at all. So the first question there is how they survive. The second question is how they get the water for the concrete, which is how all pyramids are built. There shouldn't be much confusion there. It's just concrete. You don't need to lug the blocks across the desert in wheels or anything weird like that. Humans always knew how to build concrete buildings. So it's just a matter of getting the amount of water into that location. So you need water, and there isn't any. The only possible explanation for why there's so many pyramids in deserts is that there weren't deserts before, that they became deserts later. And like you said, the timeline seems to be pointing at the 19th century. Because right before that, all of these cities on the 18th century maps and so forth, they're not in deserts. The landscape looks considerably different.
Right, Lake Congo, and you've seen the Mega Chad and all this. So the idea that the Africa looked a lot more like this, and what they're doing right now in Kuwait is interesting. This is, I think, Kuwait. So what they've done is they've built in these paths. They allow water in, and you'd think, how are you going to continue to do this? They're continuing to build this out, but how's the water going to go back around it? So they've built these natural systems that are based on what they think they use to build pyramids. They're saying, at least there, where the water can only go one way because it hits a blockage point. It naturally flows when there's tons of water, but if it tries to go the other direction, it hits a wall and it blocks it, so the water can only fill up. And then they can put papyrus on stones, push them under, float them up, and then this could be used to float pyramid stones up on top of each other as you're building the pyramid up, just using water. I'm
sorry to interrupt you. I recently learned about this geological concept of paramagnetic versus diamagnetic landscapes. And what I was told by this guy who has experience as an architect is that in paramagnetic landscapes, which tend to be on the equator in a place like Egypt, there are certain qualities or properties to the earth itself that make it easier to, let's say, levitate large weights, right? Big amounts of stone by using certain resonance and vibration, whereas in diamagnetic environments that typically tend to be near the poles, it's you don't see those types of structures.
Yep, I agree with that.
It could very well be. I think that the idea that Egypt was the center for something important in terms of energy is clear. And the fact that they now when they're going to build the tallest tower in the world, the obelisco, I mean, to me, that's interesting. Building the obelisk in the capital that's a kilometer high or more. There were a lot of other numbers too. Yeah. I mean, this is a power symbol, but maybe it's useful for Antiquitech. I feel like this is the generation where they're going to start having all the free energy built into their cities because they own the building, right? You have to rent it until you have to work there to live there. So
have you guys ever noticed that different languages of Wikipedia have different information, even though it's the same topic? I just pulled up the French Wikipedia page about Napoleon's campaign in Egypt, and there's way more information than on the English version of it.
Yeah, pull it up if you want. You can pull it up if you want to look at it.
Can you read French, Mark? Or are you translating? I mean, that's
Google Translate.
No, Google Translate, but my grandparents are French, so I should, in theory, be more able.
You've got it. You've got it in you. You can resonate.
Mystical resonance of French.
Yeah. It's in your genetic memory.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so it's all. I'm not against the idea of flying the stones or anything, but I just think it makes enough sense, the idea that they were floating the stones up, because it's pretty feasible.
Rivers carry an electrical charge, right?
This to me explains for a couple things. One, pyramids are not in the Old Testament; they're not mentioned in the Bible. Two, when pyramids do start to be mentioned, it's far later than makes sense. So if this happened in the last 1,000 years, that they diverted all the water from the Nile so that they could build these pyramids, and then that led to environmental disaster, I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me. Partially because they could control the water supply for people.
Another possible theory is that they use geopolymers, and you would need water to mix a geopolymer. At least the types that they have here in the Americas, the ancient Americas, all across Florida. There's evidence of something called ancient Indian tabby, which was like a primitive cement where they would use crushed up seashells and things like that. And we find evidence for this in Egypt, where certain structures are built out of living mineral calcium from living creatures.
So check out the Arab Sea, and then follow you can imagine also here is, according to the story, you used to be able to get out through Cairo directly, that there was a port there. So I mean, the idea that this was closed off, Alexandria or On became the most important place, and the Nile is just really diverted to the west here. I mean, you might not think that something like just diverting the Nile to one spot would be such a big deal, but it could have led to, I mean, we saw the Aral Sea. It could have led to the complete devastation of the environment here and the microclimate.
Well, actually, I did read that Napoleon was considering the Suez Canal project back then, and he decided not to do it because it would have caused devastation to the Nile plain, which had a lot of indigenous people living there. It would just totally ruin their ecosystem, and apparently it did. It wasn't it wasn't Napoleon who built the Suez Canal; it was the British afterwards.
Interestingly, though, a French guy working on it for the French government, he tricked the British into doing it. He's like, "We have to do it. We can't not do it." So he had the British do it, and basically they showed up. The British showed up as the French left, and then the Panamanians were like, "What are you doing here?" They're like, "Oh, well, we secured it with this guy." And they're like, "Who?" I'm like, "Oh man, the translator diplomat guy that we let work here. Oh, that sucks," because he made up all this fake paperwork to let them into to do it, and then they just wouldn't leave, and they built it. And the difference was the way that the French wanted to do it was to dig it out, and the way we ended up doing it was building these things again, so that when the water fills up, this time without a little raft here, the boat can be floated up, and then it opens and closes, and the boat can continue up. So the boat's actually elevated. Oh God, sorry. The boat is elevated. The canal is elevated to go above sea level.
And they did this in the United States along with what's called the Psychic Highway. They traversed all this land and kind of put all these places out of business by creating this canal here in the U.S. But I've heard from someone you've interviewed, Andreas, Walter Bosley, that Napoleon was sort of sympathetic to the indigenous cultures, and was more interested in like learning from them rather than just sort of pillaging them.
That's right.
I'm hyper curious about how much anything is real, because it's probably like the Dread Pirate Roberts, where there's a character that we think of as, is Napoleon, but it could be like a past name. But what is interesting about the official stories of Napoleon, when you get down to the layers of it, he's from Corsica, and the history of Corsica and Candia during the times of the Middle Ages are really like highly vibrant Muslim controlled places. So he would have had a pretty interesting background. He would have had a lot more education than the average person. And today Corsica is still one of the main gun trading for the different militaries and paramilitary groups around the world. They go to Corsica for arms trading. So it's an interesting spot in general, like the kingdom of Corsica. But the fact that it's kind of how Germany has an Austrian Corsica is the French Napoleon. It's just, they bring in a character, that's from just offshore. It's very FTX, you know what I mean?
Is that are you hard pivoting into crypto? Is that what?
No, I wasn't hard. I just felt that way. Well, you could do that. Otherwise, if you guys wanted to, we could talk a bit more about transhumanism, because I'm kind of interested in what you think about the future of, what's going on here. You talked about the tripod invasion and the elite. So what do you think's the real play?
Just world domination, control.
What's going to happen to humans? Are we going to augment? What are humans going to become, man?
Yeah, are we a farm? Basically we're resources, and they're going to manage our civilization.
Yeah, essentially they want full 100% control over us in all the ways you could possibly imagine. They want to control our population, our age, length, span. They want to control whether or not we can give birth. And at some point in the future or in the recent past, we will all be tricked into basically giving all of that up to them. If we do that, then they will have it, and if we don't, then they will never have it, because it's entirely a voluntary thing. Now, we know that a lot of people have already dabbled in transhumanism. You got augmented limbs and stuff, chips microplanted, but the next level of that is, of course, getting into your head. And while a lot of people focus on the brain, thinking that the brain is the center of intelligence and so forth, I think they're completely overlooking some other part of the body, which is the blood. The blood itself is the life, is you. All of the intelligence, all of the memory and the storage is actually stored in the blood. It's not stored in the brain. The brain is simply an input organ. It's for inputs, for eyes, ears, all of your inputs.
It's huge. Like one of the things I get hard for as a science buff, as a kid, was like, I want to replace my blood with titanium nano blood. Have you heard about it? Nano titanium dioxide in blood. So here's the play for this marketing. All right. So new from Gillette. No, I don't know, but some Procter & Gamble brand will probably release this. And what it'll do is replace all your blood, and instead of iron holding oxygen for a brief period of time, I forget how long it is, but you hold your breath, right? Titanium will hold it for weeks. So you could hold your breath for weeks, and your heart could stop, and you could call the doctor. You'd be like, "Oh, my heart stopped last night, and I went to bed, and I figured I'd call you in the morning." And the doctor's like, "Yeah, you should come in. Do you have maybe like Thursday?" He's like, "No, I can't do it Thursday. Tuesday? Yeah, next Tuesday. Come in next Tuesday with your heart stopped for a week and a half." And then they're like, "Look at you," and then they're like, "Oh yeah, we should probably replace this. This needs to be fixed. Do you want to come in about a week, and then we'll do it, And then they would literally, for a month, you could just be like heart stopped while they were fixing the nanobots to replace your blood that had been in there. And then that would be in the condition that they stop working.
The problem with titanium dioxide in particular is it crosses the blood-brain barrier. So it's really bad for your brain. Never eat white food if it's like a shock white candy or something. Like, food isn't naturally stark white like that. They use titanium dioxide as a whitening agent for candy.
Ooh, so no more titanium colloidal metals.
It's in our food, yeah.
All right. So what about
Mounds or peppermint patties, anything that's got white on the inside?
Oh man. Speaking of candy, the word candy means to harden.
Oh, that's true. Man, I was in Denmark, and I saw a sign for candy, and it said "dull bland," and it's supposed to be sweet, dulce, and then blend. And I was like, "Oh man, Denmark, dull bland, dull bland,
dull bland."
Oh boy. But yeah, so DNA as quantum wireless computers that are connected with each other through an acidic substrate. It's basically liquid cooled computing, because these things do explode, right, as they run. And you're going to start replacing parts of that with titanium, which crosses the blood-brain barrier, making it easier to integrate your mind and your nervous system, I think, is the key part. That also, have you guys seen like the nervous system in a I want to see like a body? Where is it? Like
I just wanted to say quickly, I listened to that Ray Kurzweil interview that you sent. I listened to the whole thing, and I thought the interesting part was in the end. Lex Friedman asks him, like right at the end, he's like, "Do you fear death?" And before he even gets the question out, Ray Kurzweil has like pressured speech, and he starts interrupting him and talking all fast and excitedly. And he really does.
Like, well, I'm not going to die. I'm not going to die. Well, yeah, of course.
He's like, I have 10 years to get this done, and then we're going to cross that threshold and not have death anymore. I consider these people to be descended masters. Like we're trying to attain ascended master state, where you totally realize that death is not something to fear. It's an essential ingredient for life is death, and everything's a closed cycle that recycles. Okay. And these people are all about escaping death and breaking that cycle. It's what I call descended masters. They have the intelligence and they have the wisdom, but they're so damaged by trauma that they're willing to do things that they know will cause suffering for themselves and others because they have this unhealed trauma.
If you factor that into world history, you realize that we might be up against people that are 300 or more years old.
Sure.
Have kept themselves alive with technology. Yes, absolutely.
And it's extremely dangerous to try to remove, any animal, human, or any kind of animal form from the life cycle and have things that don't die. And also our consciousness in ways that we can't possibly understand while we're here recycles as well, you know. So it's a terrible idea to try to stop the life cycle, or to even try to really.
Totally
I
agree.
think people forget how crazy it is that there's all these pictures and stories about super priests meeting with superpowers, meeting with interdimensional demon alien extraterrestrials that rape them sometimes, even like
Sometimes,
Saint Anthony, and sometimes grant them immortality. And that there's a war that's waged from people supposedly who'd made demon deals, right? Because they're on the other side of this interdimensional battle going on. And that this is all supposed to be going on in the centuries before the 19th century, right? Especially with the flamenco timeline.
That's a DMT elf right there, right? And that's what that is. I think that's like a representational painting.
But see, that's the problem. What if it's not? What if we're literally War of the Worlds in here, and there's a point in history where, you know, EMF shielding was necessary because there's a brain blood barrier being broken in our corporeal reality, and then the realities are merging. Which we didn't quite say this, but it's been reiterated that the official hypothesis of Earth and the moon being created, right, is from Theia. NASA's called it Theia. Theia is the planet that would have crashed, or there's another name, I think.
So you're saying, by the way, just to finish with that painting, you're saying it's like Cthulhu. Like Cthulhu is he's not a material being, but he crosses into the material plane, and he's got dimensions that our senses can't even perceive. So you're seeing like a thing you can't even really gauge the shape of it, kind of like a DMT elf is like shifting shapes. And
so I'm more cool world. I think so. What it is it's like Pac-Man is from another level of dimensional awareness than us, and you're not supposed to do a tune. Otherwise, crazy stuff happens, and that is our reality. And this movie was way watered down from what Ralph Bakshi had originally planned, by the way.
So Pac-Man is in a non-material space, and he enters into our space. And where does his material form come from?
So I think Pac-Man is in material space, but it's only like the amount of awareness that makes up Pac-Man. So Pac-Man is only aware on a flat dimensional space, whereas we're aware in a much broader sense. And
I understand. I've heard that explained really well. Like if you're two-dimensional, you're like on the pool table, and when a ball comes towards you, you just see a color on the horizon, or like.
But it could be like, you know, maybe some people are equivalents. So there's one radio station and there's another radio station.
But
and
like Pac-Man can somehow come into a higher dimension, and then there's his body transforms into 3 dimensions. Like his matters actually just gains dimensions when he crosses the threshold.
So in Cool World, when he gets a head injury in the real world, he ends up in the lesser dimensional space with the tunes, and then eventually they go through a sort of incubus, succubus, what's it called?
Oh, we lost him.
Oh man, now what do we do?
he's in the tune world.
He just he's with 2 dimensions.
Whatever he was about to say.
Did you go 2-dimensional, bro?
I don't know. It's going to be dangerous, but so incubus, succubus magic happens where the median is used. The artist, who's this prisoner, right? So he's in some sort of a crazy cult, also in prison, which I don't know now. But now talking to Thomas from Paranoid American, could have been Ekon Carr. It's all in this kind of. I should reread the screenplay, because the screenplay had so much more that Ralph Bakshi won't take his name off the movie when it was released. Like, what did they do to it? But essentially channels these spirits and demons, and then from there, by creating this awareness of them in this huge broad sense, opens the space for them to come into the real world. And through the sexual act, that's what leads to, it's a kind of a sex ritual, a magic ritual that manifests her into the real world form. But when that happens, it doesn't last for very long. And I can see if I can find the portal.
I don't remember the movie. Is her real world form a human or a 3-dimensional cartoon?
Bro, it's even weirder. It's a clown. I mean, when she looks like herself. She becomes a real world form, and then eventually she starts turning into this weird clown and it becomes clown world when post modernism starts to break down all of reality. And then eventually people start turning into clowns, and basically things merge back and forth until we all start to become one.
So I would imagine there is a 2-dimensional version of myself. And that's easy to imagine, and probably a higher dimensional version of myself. But what I'm asking about Pac-Man is there is no 3-dimensional version of Pac-Man. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, there is. Pac-Man PS5, Pac World. Let me see if I can find that again.
No, but I mean, like that's still on a screen. It's 2-dimensional. It's rendered, with shading and stuff. But what I'm saying is, like, we're here in this whatever dimension we're in, I guess, fourth dimensional space. I mean, unless he's hidden underground or under the ocean or something, we haven't seen a Pac-Man. So when Pac-Man's consciousness comes through a portal from the second dimension or wherever he is into our space, what body does he inhabit, or does his material form somehow gain a dimension and come out of one place into the other, or is it just a
right? So that's the thing. So it's the kind of theosophic tradition of ascended awareness. So you are stacks of those lower dimensions as well. Right. So Pac-Man has to be able to exist outside of Flatland simultaneously while still being in Flatland. So it's
but it might be like Douglas. You know, it might not look like Pac-Man. He might be three-dimensional Pac-Man.
Right. That's we don't. And I think that's kind of the way to have to work, is that Pac-Man would have to associate with something from the other reality.
Exactly. And what's special about Cthulhu is Cthulhu doesn't relate to anything from our reality. So when he comes into our dimension, you can't even look at him and see what you're looking at. It's like an
right. You're seeing like it's kind of like when they project on water at Disneyland. He's just kind of the water and smoke and stuff.
No, not even like that. But like you have to actually read it. You can't do a visual representation of it, of something that you can't see. But you're seeing something that you can't see when Cthulhu comes through. So the pictures are useless. You'd have to actually read out loud like the description of what the guy is trying to see.
Same thing in the book Sphere and the movie.
Yes. Good book, good movie. Michael Crichton.
I don't think I've seen Sphere. Which one's that?
They find a spaceship underneath the water. They go into the water in the spaceship. Is it AI or is it actually like a spherical alien life form on a higher dimension?
Alien sphere that they found in the universe in the future, and then they warped back in time into the present.
Oh, Darth Call is here, by the way. What's up, Darth Call?
What's up, Darth Call? Technodrome is the last thing I want to say about that, I guess, because we're 2 hours deep. Is there anything you guys wanted to make sure that we covered?
Ari, you're awesome. That's what I'll say.
Shit.
I'll cover that. Yeah.
I was wrong about the Nile, though. I don't know where I got that from.
Definitely well, no, and I was
in denial. I'm sorry.
Yeah, in denial.
Most do flow north to south. The Nile, the Red River, St. John's, and the Allegheny all flow just because of the way you described, because they start higher up elevation, they go down.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the point I was bringing up is the Nile's a freaking anomaly of what the heck is going on, and you can see how things have changed in the world. Plus, if you look at the Mega Congo, it's clearly been diverted, and that's why the Sahara looks so, map really quickly. The Sahara looks like this when it used to have, in Chad and in Sudan, giant lakes that were bigger than the Great Lakes, and down in the south under Ethiopia, you've got still a giant rainforest. So that's where you find the Mekele Mbembe. And is this something? Oh, Darth Call. What's up, bro? You made it.
But I thought I'd hop in.
What's up?
Oh man, I'm so glad you're here. We were just talking about the Mekele Mbembe. Have you heard of the Mekele Mbembe?
No, but I'm not surprised that when I switched over, you guys were talking about Cthulhu. I'm like, well, that makes a lot of sense.
Oh yeah.
I keep bringing it up. I was forcing him into the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So,
what's up, boys? Just want to say what's up to everybody on the panel. You guys are absolute Chad lads. It's a pleasure to be here.
You're a Chad lad. I can't wait to hear Better Call Saul tomorrow. Better Call Call. Yeah. Why does that I
mean, it is a world famous TV show. It makes sense.
Better Call. I prefer your show even. It's that much better.
Thank you.
Okay, so the Nile flows north, which is freaking weird.
Whoa. You gotta bring me up to speed. I saw Cthulhu. Now there's dinosaurs. What the hell are we talking about?
Okay, so the Nile is weird because it flows north, and we're talking about how they should flow south, but then it doesn't. And then if you look at the map of Africa map, you can see the giant rainforest. And if you remember the Mega Chad Lake in ancient Africa,
is it really Mega Chad Lake?
Yeah, Lake Chad, Mega Chad, and the face of. Yeah, and there's also Lake Congo. So at one point, the giant rainforest there was mainly a lake, but now it's a rainforest. So this whole area was rainforest, and it's covered in sand dunes now, which is horrible. But it's also from the beaches, and there are whales in the Sahara. Well, not anymore, right? But there were whales in the Sahara, and their bones are there.
Got whales in the Sahara. They're hiding them.
I mean, right? Yeah, like but very soon there will be, because the Sahara Sea project, they're going in the process of building the new Sahara Sea, and we're seeing all these cities that are bringing water in, and we're talking about that. But then there's Sahara snow, And so this is the future. Every year it's become more and more regular. So as the snow starts to hold on, it will impact the Sahara by turning it green. Things usually when evaporation happens, it doesn't matter. But with snow, things start to really grasp on. And so this is starting to look at the hills behind you that, all of a sudden the Sahara is going to have root structures. So that's in the next 20 years. So basically within your lifetime, you're going to see a green Sahara again. But below that is where that lake system is. And there's this thing called Mekelle Mbembe. And Mekelle Mbembe is the Loch Ness Monster of Africa. And it's not an ancient, well, maybe, but it is a concurrently existing, many people believe, cryptozoology, kind of thing. Pseudoscience, cryptozoology, but I've seen some crazy, cryptid. I've seen some crazy documentaries, though, of French people going into the Congo trading cigarette packs with local pygmies until 5 days later they get to a point where they nearly die near the Mekelle Mbembe. So I'm pretty convinced that this thing still exists, kind of like the Argentinosaurus or something, in the deepest parts of the lakes of the Congo. But that is south of Ethiopia, southwest of Ethiopia, where, things ought to be flowing. And some of the water does.
To back that up, that claim that the lake was much larger, the word Chad is a native word for a large expanse of water.
Wow, who knew? Interesting.
Yeah, not a European word.
The image for Chad.
Not a European word.
Yeah, that is lit. Oh, man.
It's not an accident. I mean, come on.
They got to get one with Chad and Niger.
Pretty sweet.
Wow.
Well, let me do a quick pull up of things.
What
to
were
show
you going to
guys.
say about Cthulhu, Darth Call?
Yeah.
Do you have something Cthulhu related you're going to interject?
Yeah.
Oh, no. I was just wondering what you guys were talking about because that's the first thing I saw.
You can't see his face. Probably real. We were saying, where was my picture? If you look at these medieval paintings, they're all about extraterrestrial, interdimensionals that are demon, alien, Cthulhu-like things. Some of them are hypercorporeal. And,
what is that photo from?
This is the painting of the medieval tale about the devil impersonating a priest and giving a perfect sermon. And there's a number of examples of similar stories. Muhammad even at one point accepts information from a devil, although I forget if they have a reason for it. I think somebody's convinced that it was all part of some plan that he had. But the Malleus Maleficarum, published by Heinrich Kramer and James Springer. So witchcraft, and this is the idea that a lot of these priests were starting to make deals with the devil or with these aliens or whatever, that they are interdimensional beings that are on the other side, in order to empower themselves. And then you've got Blavatsky talking about the bluebird. But at one point we couldn't see blue, and afterwards blue becomes the color that we see all the time, and that it's related to, the shielding of this EMF radiation from these, extraterrestrials. And therefore Cthulhu came up, Seth was bringing up, because you can't see his face. Like, you just see horror. You just see horror,
He also ate Justin Bieber in South Park.
Really?
That's got to be
yeah. And as he's being eaten, Bieber's going, baby, baby, baby. Ooh. It's pretty funny.
Oh yeah, that's right. It did happen. Man, that was a while ago.
See, I told you.
I did see this one,
dude.
What's on Cthulhu's t-shirt? He's wearing like a belly shirt.
Yeah, it says Coon Friends. It's the Coon Friends episode.
I love Cartman.
Yeah.
What's always struck me about the Cthulhu and all the old world gods is it sort of has a sort of similarity to the way certain Mesoamerican words are structured, Quetzalcoatl, Cthulhu, right? And there's a bunch of evidence that shows that those tribes had made their way all the way up as far as the Susquehanna River in Pennsylvania. So, it's not a stretch to think that Lovecraft, living in an indigenous land, maybe had some of these ideas sort of fed to him spiritually, ephemerically, through the energetic cultural residue left by the culture.
Yeah. And probably through research as well, Where's he from? New England?
Yeah, he I don't know how much literature on that subject was available at that time, but yeah, it's possible. He's from Rhode Island. He lived in Rhode Island.
I always think it's interesting when people when people are writing like a alien character, like a interdimensional character, they always try to give it like an unpronounceable name. Like that's like a great instinct, just like they would be you'd be unable to see their shape. You know, it'd be confusing to the eye. Like you wouldn't be able to speak their name either. Just in
the lack of vowels for the most part in Cthulhu. I mean, you know, you can even hyphenate and replace the vowels. I think it has to do with the consonants. They're trying to say it. Like, I kind of imagine it saying it. Onomatopoeia. But yeah, I think it is interesting looking at, like, for instance, St. Anthony's fire painting, right? All these kinds of stories about demon. There's like a point in history, and there's a lot of ways you could play it. It's like it could just be, yeah, people were on psychedelics, but this is also at the time where we're looking at free energy technology. So the idea of something on the other side of the radio veil, inter-radio.
Just think about the term "old gods" and think about ancient societies. Their religion is ritualistic use of what we call hallucinogens. I forget what the real word for it is. There's a new word for that. But so those are like the old gods, like actually learning through nature, eating the amanita muscaria, whatever, or taking the ayahuasca, and you meet the interdimensional beings. And they had a knowledge of that, and we replaced that just with like a rote system of Abrahamic religion that has nothing, that isn't connected to nature.
Right. I mean,
so like
and also the
literal old gods.
The pictures show often these hybrid gods that can fly, and then these super creatures that, you know, it's funny when people try to be reductionist about a dragon. They're like, I don't know, but I'm pretty sure that these are just. A lot of these are animals that exist in nature. At one point, they may be gone extinct, you know. But they're saying also that they've become evil, that their spirits have become evil. And this is another thing, the idea that a lot of animals have become predatorial because they have microbiology, gut fauna that makes them want to be more predatorial. It could be something inside you that's controlling you from your gut, from your nervous system. You know, go with your gut.
Hangry.
I wonder what DMT elves eat.
And St. Anthony is the thing. And so then the idea there was he had to get the spirit, you know, the spirit of the church, and the Christ was able to protect him. Because
that's a bad way to go out there. Look at the guy behind the tree, man. That guy with the white face. That guy's creepy.
Yeah, I mean, it gets worse. These are the moderated pictures because he does, you know, they literally, yeah.
These are like the nicer photos, is what you're telling me?
It's sexually assaulted, you know, like full on by these guys. Yeah, they rape him. And you know, so but while he's crossing the desert, and so that's how he eventually escapes the control in a period where they're saying this is relatively common, that there are demons, there are spirits, there are aliens.
It's really similar to the anime Berserk. I don't know if anyone's ever seen Berserk. Kind of reminds me of that, demons raping you.
I don't know if I want to, but I guess I'll.
Oh, you want to watch Berserk?
No, I mean, I was scared to pull it up. Am I okay to pull this up? What's gonna happen?
Oh yeah.
All right.
Have
yeah.
you ever heard of, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No.
It's a 90s anime. It's amazing. I mean, everyone used to watch this in the 90s. I feel
this is literally. I was gonna say that's literally the story of the origin of Teen Titans Raven, right? Because her dad. What is it? This one. Demon dad.
Well, to bring it back to where we started, a berserker was the Viking term for the same thing that the Malaysians use that word amok for, right? The berserkers would take mushrooms and they would.
Right, you missed that. We were talking about the Philippines and how their form of a berserker is someone who runs amok, and it's like they take some kratom and different substances and this big wad of mud of, you know, whatever, and then they like kill you with a yo-yo, which is just terrifying.
Wow. Yikes. Yeah, but if anyone's an anime fan and you haven't watched Berserk, do yourself a favor. It's one of the weirdest and most unique ones.
Dude, I wish you could find the weapon. But yeah, seriously, yo-yos are terrifying, and you can definitely die. So be careful with the yo-yo.
Full circle. That's what we started with, man. It's hard to bring this show for full circle. And
I'm
that's
impressed.
the story of the yo-yo, everybody. Good night.
Theoretically, I'm going to do an extra one here. Let's go better call. Well, if I type Darth Call, it's the fastest way to do this. You go to Darth Call. Make sure you're subscribed to Darth Call. Tomorrow is Better Call, and it's a great show. Mr. Douglas is on the show.
He's a co-host. He is the co-host, the G.
It's an amazing thing. I think, you know, I always tune in, even though I do a show during. I come in sometimes. I'm glad we showed a clip of you guys while last time we were doing MK Canada.
That's
so
hilarious.
Guys,
thanks, Andreas. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Make sure you
By the
guys
way,
are.
I like your Dread Pirate Roberts cosplay. You should have that one up in the gallery there at the top.
I know. I gotta squeeze him in. There's a bunch that I don't have at the top because I can only fit like.
What's the
6
yellow
faces.
Darth Call? What's that all about?
That's Maul's brother, but he's only in the Clone Wars animated show that Dave Filoni did back in like 2012 or something.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, who was cool though. I like that show, and I like Dave Filoni, and I like.
I agree.
I like
I thought he
Avatar:
did
The Last Airbender. That was his main. That's how he got started, basically.
Yeah, well, he did a great job with Clone Wars. I mean, it expands on Maul. It expands on the whole prequels. It really does bring a lot of detail to the prequels. It kind of enriches what Lucas started with. So you give it props, you know. And it's pretty violent.
Yeah.
If you're for a kids' cartoon, people get chopped in half. They get their heads cut off constantly. It's pretty accurate to Star Wars.
I remember thinking like, man, when they look super cartoony, so your parents will let you watch it. But then as soon as they put like the Clone War helmets on, where's like the clone troopers, then all of a sudden it looks pretty real all of a sudden to me, like the way it, and so and then the people start dying all the time, and you're like, yeah, but they're clones, and you're like, wait, eventually there's only so many clones, and they're basically Vietnam vets. Oh, I get it. So yeah, he did a good job, I thought.
It gets more cartoony. Like do Anakin Skywalker Rebels, Andreas. Like he progressively gets more kiddie-ified.
Yeah, so I don't like Rebels. I did write a
first 2 seasons, but I liked it.
I did write a song about Anakin Skywalker.
That's awesome.
Specifically about Matt Lanter, who plays the voice of Anakin Skywalker in the Clone Wars.
He's a great Anakin.
Song goes something like, "Oh, Matt Lanter, oh, you saved that show. Oh, Matt Lanter from 90210. Oh, Matt Lanter, I want to digitally recreate and replace Hayden Christensen with you. Oh, Matt Lanter." Something like that.
That's wild, Andreas. I dig it.
All right, so VBDC, one of my favorite people in the world. This is his link tree.
Thank you, buddy.
You guys go to his YouTube. Make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube, watching all the music videos, and also buy his shirts.
Yeah, go to the merch because I just put up my Christmas store, and I'd like.
Oh, that's right.
The Christmas is Essential hoodie by
Christmas.
Yeah, pull up that white hoodie if you can.
This one here. Christmas is Essential.
That's a character right there. It's original art by Abonks. It's got his signature on the back. And don't let them tell you what in life is essential, you know.
That's a cool idea. Yeah, it's subtle, but also like
very Christmas. Literally, Fox News got one thing right.
Gosh, that's pretty good. Yeah, I love that one. I'll do
check me out on Instagram every day at 6 o'clock California time, except for Wednesdays when I'm here for my show Talkie Time.
I wish I had the picture to show them of your new squirrel feeder. So remind me.
I like that.
I got a nut bar.
Yeah, you'll have to send me a picture of the nut bar, and that's awesome.
Do they actually go up and get the food?
Yeah, and it's shaped like a bar with stools and everything.
Nice.
It's epic.
Awesome.
There was no way they wouldn't. Are you kidding me? That'd be crazy. And then Mr.
Man,
Douglas.
thanks for having me on every time, man. It's my favorite day of the week.
Mr. Douglas.
Mr. Douglas.
I'll be on tomorrow with Dorth Cole. Tomorrow, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Mr. Douglas, MIST3RDOUGLAS.com.
Pretty exciting stuff. And then also, I should go back to the Darth Call page again, because if you haven't already begun to, you need to start listening to the City of Okami. Listen to the whole Werewolf series, but City of Okami is amazing. And so, yeah, I can't wait for chapter 5. I'm really excited. So
you're going to be in it, Andreas. I'm going to have you be one of the people at the campfire. Yeah.
Oh, that's exciting.
But you got to have good. You got to have good audio. Doug will tell you, like.
Yeah, Doug, you're gonna help me. I've got my Shure mic and my cloud lifter. We'll do it right, you know.
Yeah.
Your audio got so bad just as you're saying that, bro.
I got really close to the microphone. I'll better calm down.
We'll work it out. Don't worry. We got it.
But yeah, Doug audio engineered these chapters. I wrote.
He engineered the shtick out of this, man.
Dude, and his game went up on chapter 4 because I asked him, "What's your favorite chapter?" And he's like 4 by far, because it had been a long time. It went chapter 1, 2, and 3, and then we didn't really make anything for many years. And then chapter 4 came around, and Doug's game obviously had been raised. It was crazy.
Peaking, super good. Yeah, chapter 4, guys. Make sure you're listening to the Werewolf series, the Werewolf Saga in 1989 Los Angeles. It's amazing. And then my family thinks I'm crazy. Make sure you're watching all of the new podcasts from Mark. Amazing stuff. Wisconsin Lore, Beast of Bray, Road Kid Damashi, and Synchro Mysticism. The YouTube channel is here. subscribe, click the bell, go to the videos, and also check lives because he has some lives here still too. But also Old Underground Architecture, Red Brick Seattle, and Ayahuasca with Matthew Smith. I haven't seen this one yet. I haven't watched that.
Well, I accidentally.
Oh, that just came out while we were doing the show?
I meant to schedule it for 10 o'clock. For whatever reason, I scheduled it for 8 o'clock. I didn't notice.
That's cutthroat. This guy competes with himself. You know what I mean? He's like, you can either watch me here or there. You have to choose.
To be fair, I went in the chat over there and I said, hey, everybody, I'm actually live on Wednesday. Ultra. Watch me there first and then finish watching that. So next week, I'll schedule my video for 10 o'clock. But yeah, I got a bunch of new stuff coming. Just did 2 episodes on the old world. There's another one coming out soon. So look forward to that.
Sweet. Awesome. And then paradigmthreat.net. Paradigmthreat.net. Someone do a beat for me for a second. No, it's okay. Paradigmthreat.net.
Doug was about to do it.
Does he have all the data? You better get. You bet. Paradigmthreat.net. I don't know. Yeah. So basically, this is actually no kidding. One of the best websites for the research that we're interested in, including mud flood. Amazing stuff, Ari. I love this site just in general. Okay. It doubles as a plug for you, but in general, I would recommend, and I have recommended this site before to other people. And I think it's important because people that have all kinds of questions about heliocentricity and our astronomy and everything like that, looking into the idea of entanglement of reality, that Mars and Earth and these things are stacked on top of each other, planes. That's an interesting thing to look into, while also not negating any of the science. Just trying to look into the science, question it, test it. Super sweet. It's good to be cynical, not just a conspiracy theorist, but conspiracy cynic. So, and I love the Earth history timeline reconstruction. If you didn't watch it yet, watch the Think Tank from last week where Ari goes through the Earth history reconstruction timeline, which is really fascinating. At some point, I think we're going to go even deeper. We got to do this again, even more hardcore. So,
totally
amazing stuff.
Hell yeah, dude! Wednesday Ultra, phenomenal stuff, Andreas. Yeah.
Wednesday Ultra, buy yourself the t-shirt. It's pretty neat. Or get yourself the sweater because it's cold out. If it's cold, you want the sweater.
Baseballs.
It's pretty good there. Yeah.
I'm gonna get one of those, man. Hey, before we go, there's a guy in the chat, Shameful, who I told him I would ask Ari. He asked 1,000 times, does Ari know Ben from Suspicious Observers?
Sounds really familiar, actually. I think so.
Great YouTube channel. Great YouTube channel. Yeah, Suspicious Observers. Ben Armstrong, daily videos.
The guy that tells you the temperature of the sun every morning.
Yeah, Electric Universe.
Oh, is he the dude who says that the moon is the sun is now replaced for fluorescent light? Is that his channel?
No, he looks at the Earth facing cameras. Whatever, I forget what they're called, Helio 1 and 2 or something. It just gives you like a literal weather report for the sun, amongst other things like CMEs.
That's cool. Yeah, I'll have to check that out. That sounds legit.
Definitely. Ben Davidson. Yeah.
And Holly, thank you very much. Wow. $19. $19. Woo! Holly, thank you very much. Stay clear, everyone. Get it? That's kind of a
yeah.
Bye.